Yo, what up? What up? Mic check 1 2 1 2. I think I see some people up in here. Mic check 1 2 1 2. Shout out to everybody coming into the room. Man, Survive, man. We here. We
Yes,
here
sir.
on a day. Good to see you, brother. How was your weekend?
Man, everything was cool, man. How was everything with you?
Good, good, man. Your Thanksgiving and all that was right.
Yeah, man. I'm just mad it wasn't like more sweet potato pie for me, man. Like I ain't gonna lie, like the family went in because it was like multiple things. I got like 2 pieces off. I came back. Mom was like, it ain't that much left, so leave us some. I was like, I seen as much as I was like, I ain't taking no more, man. Like that's the only thing. I wish we had more sweet potato pies, bro.
You know, it. I think that's kind of been the story for everybody this year. It's like it was a low key, Thanksgiving for a lot of people. I think what's happening, and not to get on like social shit too much, but I feel like even with Halloween, with the election and everything, Halloween kind of got skipped over. And then after that, it was like people went straight to Christmas. So it was like Thanksgiving was like, yo, get out the way. And I think that people didn't really build up Thanksgiving like they used to, man. We're living in a faster paced world, and I'm seeing holidays even become victims of that. You know what I mean?
I just think groceries is hella expensive.
Exactly. I agree. You know
Man,
what?
think about that. Like it's like, hey man, uh, groceries is high. Stuff is expensive these days, man.
Yeah, man. I mean, listen, you're right. We saw a byproduct of that this year. Like groceries being hella expensive. What does that mean for Thanksgiving? Yep. Smaller Thanksgiving gatherings.
Yep.
Man, they need to get a farm again. Thumbs up in the chat. Thumbs up in the chat. Let's get the people in here, man. We got a lot to talk about today, man. LL Cool J said he's the most important MC of all time. Funk Flex is out here co-signing what Drake is spewing with the payola and things of that nature. J. Cole has announced his Madison Square Garden concert. And we're going to talk some top 10 MCs all time type stuff. And, what MC you listening to on a 6-hour ride? Um, man, I don't even really know where to start. You know what? I do want to start here. Let's start here. First of all, great job from Leroy, Ron, and yourself for the Absol interview that took place this past weekend. And if you haven't checked it out, it's on the According to Hip Hop channel. What were some things that you took away from the interview without, giving the people too much?
Um, I like that he's pure to the art. Um, I like that he really zones in and he's one with his music and he knows what the purpose of his music serves and he does his best to be a vessel of doing so.
I've always been, for whatever reason, and I don't know if it was his approach to music or him being the conspiracy theorist in some of his bars, I always personally liked Ab-Soul the most. I think that, when you look at that whole Black Hippie crew, and I'm paying homage here with the shades and everything today. Well, like, he kind of had that Easy E image, and as far as like the visuals and whatnot with the shades, and just his approach was very different. I think the Black Hippies whole collective was so dope because those guys were all so different. Kendrick's different than Schoolboy, who's different than Ab-Soul, whose approach is mad different than J-Rock. And I think that's when you have a great group, great collectives. I've always said, and I know they were talking about on the weekend round, they were going through some of the great groups of all time and their greatest albums. For me, I've always thought that um, a great group, especially in rap, is going to give you different voices. And I know we had a whole conversation on voices last week with Kendrick and his voice and all that. But different dynamics when it comes to vocal tones, styles, and everything. For me, those are what make great dynamic groups. I think when I first heard Clips specifically, and their brothers, for me, and I got used to this over time. For me, they sounded too much alike vocally, where it was like when I first heard Grinding, I didn't know who was who. You know what I'm saying? And I think with a great group, for the most part, you have these different dynamics and these different tones and different approaches. And Black Hippie hit that on all cylinders. Like you got Ab-Soul, he's doing what he does over here. You got Kendrick doing what he does over here. Schoolboy has a whole different approach, and J-Rock had a whole different approach. So I mean, but saying all that to say, Ab-Soul's approach is what I drew to the most. You know what I'm saying? And it's like that's what I miss in hip hop, where we used to have groups where you would hear a group and it would be one individual that you kind of hone in on, that you could kind of connect with over everybody else in the group. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the Hot Boys. You know what I'm saying? Like I remember when the Hot Boys came out, and obviously Juvie was already a star with 400 Degrees. Um, by the time the rest of us actually got to know who the Hot Boys were. But when they came together as a collective, you had people who fucked with Turk. You had people who fucked with Wayne. You had people who fucked with BG. You had people who fucked with Juvie. And we don't get those dynamics anymore. I think the last time we got that was Migos, feels like.
Yeah, the thing about with Ab that's interesting as well is like, and Kendrick even said this in the Heart Part 6, like, something about how Ab helped them better his pen. So I thought that was a big statement. And then I know in past interviews, Schoolboy Q says like sometimes he'll run a line or something through Ab. So it's like he's really the soul of that of TDE, the soul of Black Hippie, because we have 2 out of 4 that said, hey, like his mind with how he approaches music is something that they kind of like, that inspires them or how they craft their songs and whatnot. And the crazier thing is, I don't think Ab writes his music either. I think it's all off the dome because Ab's colorblind, of course. So I think he doesn't even write his own music. He it's off the dome. And for people saying they strengthen their pen because of that, I mean, I think it says a lot. And this is a guy who doesn't get the mainstream accolades or the chart success, or, I think out of all Black Hippie, I don't think he has a hit record out of all of them. But the content and the way he approached music is like unorthodox, and a lot of them admire that. And you have people like Lupe that pays respect to it and everything. I mean, I think that says a lot about who he is as an artist, his approach, and him being a purist to the arts at its finest.
I agree, and it's funny. I never really thought about it in those terms, but you're right, because J-Rock has win, 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 right? You got Schoolboy Q got Man of the Year, and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
And really, like you said, that speaks more so to his approach than, I guess, inability to make a hit. I don't think he does it for that. Like, I think he uses his messaging and his approach as a vessel for something bigger. I always, and again, I thought the interview was incredible, and shout out to you guys for getting that knocked out. I wouldn't ask this, but I've always wondered. Like, I remember his stance on like Obama being a puppet and this and that, and again, friends can have differences and still be friends. I always wonder what his thoughts were on the whole cover to Pimp a Butterfly, and how influential he may have been in that approach. And and Kendrick, after the fact, I guess getting to know President Obama at the time, and obviously Obama's a real big supporter of Kendrick himself. And I just wonder if Ab still has that mindset, because I remember. Have you heard the song? Is it "Welcome to Black America"? It was with him and Common. It was supposed to be on Black America again, I thought, and I guess it got cut. It's one of those situations where Common is Common. He got on the record, did his thing, but Ab-Soul killed him on that record. And he said something along the lines of, my president is black. It's like, my grandpa glad whether they pass that gun law or not, my nigga's still gonna end up dead, or something like that. You know what I mean? And I always thought that he had those undertones where, from a grassroots standpoint, where a lot of people would agree, but maybe those type of sentiments are why he never either wanted to cross over or did cross over in that sense, or was this a bigger purpose for him? Who reminds me of Big Gip, saying all that to say, if I compare them to Goody Mob, he's Big Gip.
I can see how you say that.
And
even from the look,
you know what I mean? Yeah.
Even from the look. And it's interesting with Ab as well. Is like, you can obviously tell he's a lover of the culture and a lover of this thing we call hip hop as well. I mean, the interesting question he asked us on that interview was like, it validated us of knowing that, okay, we could have that conversation now. So there's a part in that interview for you guys who haven't checked it out. He asked a very great question. If you are a lover of hip hop and everything hip hop and the roots of it, he asked us a very important question, and we was able to answer that. And Leroy, took the lead way on that, but it's a question we all know the answer to over here at According to Hip Hop, and I felt like that speaks to who he is. And you know, I think he's just like a interesting person out of the group. I feel like he's probably one of the most interesting to me. To have somebody like Kendrick, who's probably considered the most popular out the bunch, say he wished he strengthened his pen because of this guy, and knowing that he's the person that doesn't have the mainstream success as the rest of them. Like I said, that's just the heart and soul of who they are and what TDE seen individually in each one of them as well. So yeah,
Well,
shout out to him for doing the interview, man. He's a dope guy. And one thing, and I think Ron said this on the last show that we was doing. I like, and this is out of many artists that I interviewed. One thing I do like about Ab is he really thinks about it, and he really answers his questions fully. So he's a guy, when he talk, you have to, like, when you get your question off and he speaks, you just gotta let him get his stuff off before you ask him something next to keep it going, because he's gonna answer your question fully. He's not gonna give you those just one answer questions. Like, he really thinks about it, and he's very like uh well crafted in what his answers are gonna be.
Well, shout out to Ab for stopping by According to Hip Hop. Hopefully, it won't be the last time. We need to do one of these in person joints. And like I said, you guys did a great job. And check out the video on. I mean, not the video. Check out the interview on the According to Hip Hop channel. Now, before I move on, I'm gonna ask you this: do you
Mhm.
think we're going to get a Black Hippie album at some point?
Yes.
Okay.
I think with what Kendrick said on the Heart Part Sits and him taking accountability for why it never worked, and he knows, and every one of them knows at this point that the people want it. We've seen the response to him bringing them out at the pop up show. I think at this point, that's like, I think you mentioned this in the previous show. That's like one thing Kendrick can go back to. That's one thing that we never really got. I think, the original Black Hippie stuff, I think those were mixtapes. We never really got an official Black Hippie album. So to see that put together with where they are now and where they went creatively individually, yeah, I think that could happen probably sooner than later. To be
So,
totally honest with you, because I think everybody's creative stuff is going. I think the only person that hasn't had an updated recent body of work is J Rock, and we don't know if he's coming or not. But the way TDE is moving, J Rock might be up next. So yeah, we
I could see J Rock being one of the member, well, the member in the group, if you will, that this came together. He's going to be clicking on all cylinders. Like, I think of Black Lip Bastard remix and stuff like that. Like J Rock, he'll close out a song, and I do think that we've gotten to a place in hip hop, and I was talking to a younger hip hop listener where they was like, songs need to be 2.5 minutes and this and that. And I think we're at a place in hip hop right now where 4-member groups will suffer from the fact that we have people who do only want to hear a 2.5 minute long song. And if we do get a Black Hippie or we do get a Slaughterhouse or something like that, I want 4-verse songs. I want 4-minute songs, and I don't want 8-bar verses. You know what I'm saying? And I think at some point, the hip hop group has to be important again.
yeah,
And I don't, but see, again, I think that is just going to have to, I think the listeners, some of the listeners or some generation of listeners are just going to have to change the way that they listen to music. I don't, again, man, call me old school with it. Not a big fan of the 2.5 minute long songs. I think to some of my favorite songs ever, if they got cut off at 2.5 minutes, it's so much that's missing. And not to mention, we talk about, 3 or 4 man groups. Like, you're not getting a third verse in there in a 2.5 minute long song. So I just hope that mentality and that way of crafting music, obviously it hasn't affected Kendrick like that, but I just hope it doesn't stunt the possibilities of us getting a Black Hippie album or any other collective coming along and giving us music.
Well,
Because, yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, Mike, I don't think it will affect that in a sense
Right.
because Black Hippie, when you really think about like their early, stuff where they did mixtapes and everything, the underground stuff, that stuff
Yeah.
wasn't made for radio in the first place. And
Right.
these days, they can do numbers off the hype and all this stuff of all of them being together without even having a lead and single on radio.
Right.
When you really think about the last real successful rap group that got the radio playing, the mainstream pushing all that, it was the Migos.
Yeah.
Uh, Other than that, we haven't seen it in a long time since the Migos. But you know, groups like Black Hippie is not made for radio. When they get together, they're spitting, they're competing against each other. They're gonna keep on pushing each other's pen, and I don't think that's made for radio. I don't think that's made for mainstream. I think if we get a bop out of that, that would be dope. But I don't think that's what they're for. I think that's core hip hop for anybody who really appreciate bars and lyrics. And I think Kendrick, I know a lot of people think Kendrick's too big where he won't do it. But one thing I've seen throughout this beef course is Kendrick has revisited his roots, and he shows no problem with collaborating with people within his teams and within LA and things of that nature. Like we look at Giannett's and the artists that he brought on, those 11 different up and coming artists. Then I look at his efforts in the past on a Black Panther soundtrack, and like I think he has no problem working with his home team.
I
So I
think
can
the
see him
beef has kind of
coming.
gotten him, like you said, closer to that. I mean,
Yeah,
that's what it seems like
yeah.
when you saw the collective come together in the "Not Like Us" video or in that performance that Kendrick did. It was a powerful moment, and it was the first time we really saw Kendrick do those things, really since his big break. Um, Somebody in the chat said, "Bring back 3 verses and hooks." I
Yeah, I
agree
mean,
with that,
I have
and
nothing
I
wrong.
think that's a great transition here. Um, LL Cool J said he's the most important rapper of all time, and I say that's a great transition because I think LL Cool J and Rick Rubin, they're the people credited with giving us that 16 bar verse, 8 bar hook formula. 16 8, 16 8, 16 8. Shout out to Fresh Out. They said LL Cool J says that he's the most important rapper that ever existed. 2 Grammy Award winner, 2-time Grammy Award winner, 4-time NAACP Image Award winner, 2-time Billboard Award winner, 2-time MTV Video Music Award winner, 3-time Soul Train Award winner, 14 albums, 4 platinum. I thought he had more platinum than that. First artist signed to Def Jam, first rap artist to have 10 consecutive platinum albums. Okay, so that was wrong. Inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Should have been there way earlier than 2021. What do you think about LL Cool J being the most important MC of all time? Thumbs
I
up in the chat.
um I think that's valid. I mean, there's a lot of firsts with LL. Def Jam, as we know it, was built off LL. He's a guy who was the first person to sign the Def Jam. I know
Hold
people.
on 1 second. I think I hear echo. You hear echo on your end, or is that me?
Nah,
You guys hear that echo out there?
I don't.
Okay.
I hear echo.
Sound like somebody's background. Ron, that's your background? Yeah. Yeah, Ron. Can you mute your side, bro? There we go. There we go. Now go ahead.
So yeah, I think I mean, that's valid. I mean, I know a lot of people thought Run DMC was probably the first artist on Def Jam. No, that was Rush Management. And LL is the first official Def Jam artist. The reason why we use the term GOAT comes from LL. Let's think about the brand deals like Kango and what he was doing as far as battles, his infamous Mo D battle, the lines he dropped to Ice-T. Like, he was one of the people that was one of the young gunners that was ready to go in there and represent for the young ones against the established artists, who already kind of were solid in the game. He was taking on those battles head on. I mean, at this point, LL is iconic. What he did in movies and in music is separate at this point, that I think a lot of younger generation, even my generation or younger, needs to get familiar with what LL contributed to hip hop. It's crazy when younger kids they find out LL raps. And LL raps? That's crazy. That next generation is so removed of him as a rapper that they just think of him as an actor. And he really got busy. He was one of those ones who really put on. And I think LL is one of the most important. He's the reason why rappers feel they have to have a track for the ladies. You know what I'm saying? Like, he a lot of risks within his career, the look, the chains. He was one of the first real ones that you could first get that kind of like hip hop was still new and fresh, but a lot of the older cats was like, man, who's this young, flamboyant, fresh guy? Who does guy think he is? And he was the one that was ready to back up what it was. So I think it got to be a lot of respect that goes to LL, and I think he is important in every sense, because we got a lot of things in hip hop due to LL that I don't think he gets the credit for.
Mad Max of the Super Chat says, love L, but Melle Mel existed before. Now, okay, I want to address that. Yeah, obviously Melle Mel, Grandmaster Caz, and many existed before L. I'm going to have to agree with L on this. Now, I've written articles on this before, and mainly when I was trying to campaign for L to get into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I think LL is the most important individual rapper in hip hop history. Now, you had people like Curtis Blow, who's the first solo artist to sign a major record deal. Obviously, Run DMC's Run DMC, but they're a collective. I think what Run DMC meant to hip hop can never be matched. But as a solo MC, during a time period where everybody was clicked up, Melle Mel included, being with Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five. Same thing with Kool Moe Dee, who was with the Treacherous Three. Run DMC was a collective. You have this 16, 17-year-old kid who is literally jumping out here as a solo artist in a climate full of nothing but groups. That speaks to his level of intensity as a performer, his level of marketability as an individual. I think that was the thing too that made L so important, that he showed that a hip hop artist could be marketable in so many different ways, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't like we were just talking about groups where it's like, groups are, to me, I think groups are a little bit easier in some ways to market than solo artists, because you got a couple of people for the audience to gravitate to. Like, you know what I'm saying? The audience could say, yeah, I like Run, I like DMC, I like Jam Master Jay. When it comes to LL Cool J, you gotta like LL Cool J. And he's standing alone in a time where, like I said, everybody is, clicked up and crewed up. So he was showing that this solo artist thing can actually work in hip hop, even though he did have a DJ, but his DJ wasn't attached to his name, like, Eric B. and Rakim, respectfully, Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince, Polo and Cool G Rap. Like, he showed that, a solo artist can actually be a superstar in hip hop. And I always thought that LL Cool J was hip hop's first superstar. Not only, showing that he could market to the younger audience, but then he came through on Bigger and Deffer with I Need Love and showed that, not to say he made the first hip hop love song, but he made the one that actually worked and they could actually sell. And was like, he could be respected for, making a record like Bad, Rock the Bells, Radio, and still get love from the ladies on something like, I need love and show vulnerability. I mean, those are some things that had never really been shown on that level before. Mad Max with the super chat says, Melle Mel was the first great MC, and Rakim changed how people rhyme. Love L. Everyone knows that that's my guy. I know that, and I'm really surprised at your take on this. But this is his ego talking, and he's earned that. But Rakim changed the art form. Are we gonna do the Rakim and L thing? Okay, I'm with that. Jermaine Johnson with the super chat says LL's formula of street records and credibility in conjunction with the club/girl records is the blueprint for Diddy that used for Biggie. Man, Max also says LL can be the most important image or face or entertainer, but overall, nah. And that's my man. Listen, y'all know how I feel about Rakim. I think Rakim's the greatest lyricist I ever heard, and the way he changed how everybody rhymes and flows, you can't replace that. And is Rakim nicer than LL? Yes, not even close. But if we're talking about more important, I don't know, man. More important. I'm hearing that background noise again. Yo, Rob, mute your joint, man, please. More important, I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to go L. And I only say that because, again, it's like, man, Paid in Full is a grand slam. But what L was able to do from a crossover standpoint, and everybody needs that crossover, I think it's like winning a championship. We talk about T.I. and Luda all the time. I always thought T.I. was way better than Luda. But Luda being a crossover star, Atlanta needed that. And if you ask me who's more important, that might be a different conversation.
Yeah, like when we're thinking about what a mainstream rapper is composed of, LL was kind of like the mold for it. He had the markability. He had the look, he had the music, he had the set symbolism. You know what I'm saying? He had the business sense early. Early hip hop, a lot of rappers was getting jerked. Pause. You know what I'm saying? But LL had the business sense. LL was one of those rappers outside of Will who had sitcoms, who had, he did his thing with clothing. He was in movies, like outside of, Ice Cube had his run with movies and stuff like that. And but we seen Busta and some early stuff, but we think about LL and the early hip hop movies he was in, and like he was just the complete package, all in one, man. Like he changed the way that competition is looked at in hip hop. He changed the way that style was looked at in hip hop. He changed the way we approach records from risk taking. Like I said, I Need Love, man, that really changed the scope of how people looked at how records are gonna be used in the future. I think all of that is important to where we're talking about where hip hop came from. That like it comes from that mold, man.
I think LL is the prototype of what a solo hip hop star could be.
Yeah.
I think he checked off more boxes than anybody in his era. And then I see somebody in the chat talking about Pac. Then you have somebody like Pac who comes in, who checks most of the boxes that L checks, and then some more. You know what I'm saying? So I think that L is that ground floor on that level. Now, this I will say. I think the only reason why he even has to say these things and why people have hesitation to take these things in is because L doesn't have the albums of his contemporaries. That's the only thing he misses. His performance is high. His the other thing too, and I'm gonna be honest, and I ain't saying L ain't like that on the mic, but he doesn't have the quotables like his contemporaries either. I would say the albums and the quotables are the things that get people to be hesitant to give him these props that you would think should be a shoe-in. He doesn't have a Paid in Full. You know what I'm saying? He doesn't.
He had some quotables, man. He had,
he got quotables like Jay, Nas, Rakim, Biggie, Pac. No, he don't. I mean,
he's the reason why we use the term GOAT. You know what I'm saying?
That's different. I'm talking about bars. I'm talking about like straight up verses.
the has like a shark's fin. You know what I'm saying? I'm bad. I crush you like a jelly bean. Like this is.
Yeah.
It may not be up to date, but he was the guy that kind of had those quotables back then. Even on diss tracks, like I say, he got with Mo D. He had joint stories, Ice-T. He had like, you know, it's funny to you know, just reference this, but because it's one of the funniest battles ever. But that line, I'm 18, nigga, making more than your dad, like what Bow Wow saying in Sub the Romeo, that was a line from LL against Mo D. You know,
Yeah.
so I'm saying like he had quotables now, like LL had some joints, you know. I'm just saying, bro.
No, you're right. Those were quotables. I think when people like Rakim, KRS, and Kane and Cool G Rap came along, they kind of upped the ante when it came to the bar work. But again, I think that L's approach to music is what made him as crossover and mainstream as he became in ways that they weren't able to do those things. And all of those things were needed. Mad Max with the super chat says, laughing my ass off, Mike. You take Rakim out, we still rapping like Melle Mel and the Cold Crush rock ish. LL ain't changed how we rhyme. He changed what we talked about, but not the art form. I disagree with that. I mean, when you hear LL on I Need a Beat, computerized with the engineer's eyes had to be very acute, education level high. Nobody's rapping like that. So, I
even
mean, I do think there's a middle section between Run DMC, Houdini, and Rakim and KRS, and that middle section is LL Cool J.
yeah,
Like
even when
straight
LL
up.
on, let's not forget LL's verse on 4-3-2-1. You know what I'm saying? Like,
You
come
think
on.
he has that verse on 4-3-2-1?
Oh man, we get into that all the time. I mean, because I love Etz's verse on there, but I don't know. LL finishing that off, you know, with Redman, you know, giving him that lean and him coming on there and spitting it, and the way he ended it, that shit was,
I
hey man.
always thought Cannabis had the best verse on there, objectively. And maybe I was a big Cannabis fan at that time, but
I
I
mean,
always thought
slept,
Cannabis.
Cannabis was slept on for his verse on there. I'm not gonna act like he wasn't getting busy on that. He was,
I mean,
but
Cannabis the type to fight for mics, beating niggas to death and beating dead niggas to life. If you look at me long enough, I start to reach your thoughts if the signal is strong enough. I don't know, man. I loved L's verse, but it felt like L was trying really hard to get at Cannabis on and he did. You know what I
man,
mean?
mic on the arm joint, like sit back to the mic on my arm. Like, come on, man. Like, I don't know. He was spitting on that shit. You
You
know?
know, I think X's verse aged really well because at first, I think maybe because I was such a big Redman and Method Man fan, I was gravitating to them, and I was a Cannabis fan. And I didn't really pay X that much attention because I didn't know who he was at that time.
Mhm.
But his verse is up there too. I
I
don't know,
want
man. I would, objectively speaking, I might say LL had like maybe the fourth best verse in that song. Lord with the super chat says L was important to the industry. Rod was important to the art form. Now, what would you say is LL Cool J's best verse in your opinion?
ooh.
Because this is where I have trouble with his quotables in relation to the people who are top 10 like himself. Because I feel like LL's top 10, straight up.
You make me have to go back and actually go down that because it's like LL. Unfortunately, LL is not one of those artists I visit his music a lot. But
I
he
For
has
me, my favorite L verse is the breakthrough. Um, he was getting the MC Shan on there
yeah.
and like a 80 something bar verse. Or if we're talking about his feature on Rampage, but see the thing is, man, it's like if I start correlating that with the best bar work from Rakim, Nas, Jay, Big, all the people who were in his caliber, even Kendrick, if we're being honest. Yeah, I know y'all gonna kill me for that. I mean, I don't know how it matches up, to be honest.
I mean, it's different eras though, man, because the bars that L was saying early in his career, like those were considered the dopest joints back then, you know, when he was making, you know, Rock the Bells and Bad and all that, you know. But we're talking about difference of eras and flows being updated and things like that. You know, like when LL got the older LL, most of the stuff was mainly for the ladies. You know, most of his hits that came from that were lady records. He wasn't really kind of like spitting tough like that no more, barring up per usual. I mean, he had some album cuts and stuff like that, but you know, I think you can't compare them throughout the eras and what was at what time versus now.
You know what I think? I think LL said, and I could be wrong. It's just my opinion. I'm not putting words in LL's mouth. You know, thumbs up in the chat. I think that LL said this in slight or in spite of Jay-Z. I think that he feels that Jay-Z gets propelled as being the most important rapper. You always hear people talking about these Jay-Z stories. Jay-Z said this, Jay-Z said that, Jay-Z told Drake to give Cole a hit and all these things. And I do think that whether he's going to admit it or not, in my opinion, knowing over history and over time how LL reacts when Jay-Z's name's brought up, I think he feels a way about the fact that they got inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame at the same time, as if Jay has some level of tenure that LL has. I think that L wants people to know that, yeah, I'm more important than him. When he said he's the most important, I think that the first person he's thinking about is Jay. It's like, he's not the most important. And not to mention that he built Def Jam. And for a lot of people, you know, when you say Def Jam, for some people, they feel that Jay is the most important Def Jam artist, which I would totally disagree with.
I
But
mean,
they need to
culmination.
go ahead and get it on, man.
Yeah, it's a culmination of things. First of all, you know, when Jay became head of Def Jam, I think LL probably felt some way about that. When you start talking about who's most important, he could feel a certain way about that. I feel like all of those are valid. You have to have one before you get the next. One open up the door for the other. But hip hop evolves, and I do like that he's popping his shit. I think if anybody deserves to say, "Hey, I was important for X and Y reasons," it's gonna be LL. I mean, I can't argue with that, man. He's he's an icon at this point, and if that's the way he feels, valid. And
Well, I
he
mean, you
back it
said
up.
it yourself. LL came up with the term GOAT. How do you think he feels when people refer to Jay-Z as the GOAT?
Um,
Knowing how he feels about Jay. Well, I mean,
I
I don't.
mean, just in the heart of competition, I'm always gonna feel like I'm better than everybody. Like I can crush. Even you're always supposed to have that confidence of that. But for LL's sake, I think that he has a real legitimate reason to feel the way that he feels
Pure
as far
fight.
as the importance of hip hop. Because out of all the rappers in the industry that came under him, I think all of them could say they all have a mutual respect for LL and what he did for hip hop. You
And
know,
Jay-Z has been very vocal in the fact that, coming up, LL was kind of his mark. You know what I'm saying? Like LL was the goal to reach, right? I think Jay tells a story about him rapping for his older uncle or whatever, and saying that he was as nice as LL, and his uncle's like, LL, nah, nigga, you ain't nice, like, you know what I mean? It's like that was his mark to get to, and even that whole story about him, Sauce Money, I want to say it was Jazz that battled LL outside of the club or something before they got on. And again, got to give it to LL for even battling guys who were unknown. You know what I mean? What we got? Black Wealth and Power. Shout out to you in the room. He says LL is definitely the most underappreciated MC of all time, considering his resume. No one is more underappreciated with a comparable resume to LL. I've always said this. I feel
yeah,
like LL needs a real. I think what LL needs, and this usually works for most people, LL needs a biopic. LL needs a biopic for people to really understand everything that LL brought to the game outside of what they see from a mainstream level, because I think that's the catch-22 of being such a mainstream success and never really having those peaks and valleys in your career. People take your accomplishments for granted and they don't even really acknowledge all of the ground you broke. I feel like Queen Latifah gets the same treatment. Like Queen Latifah is
Yeah,
iconic on every
yeah.
level. And we don't even talk about the fact that Flavor Unit has been operating and still operating for like 35 plus years. Like, she
Yeah.
was a boss a long time ago and still is. And no one talks about it.
Yeah, that's facts. You know, and the thing about LL too is it was always a little rival. I mean, there you heard the story about Dame saying they'll just pull up where LL's at with Jay, and Jay will go back try to battle him or whatever. You hear those stories, so it always kind of been like a little rival. But like I said, you have to have one before the other. And as much as of a Jay fan I am, man, we have to give that respect to LL. Man, he's one of those guys that we say is iconic and one of those people that we could say is one of the true living legends of this thing we call hip hop.
Do you think Jay owes L a battle? Because clearly LL wants to battle. Do you think?
No. Even when I'm hearing how LL raps on his new project, on his latest project, I like it, but it's not up to date enough where I think it will match up to Jay right now if Jay was to get back in a booth. It's gonna sound like a difference in approach to how the delivery of the music is, man. It's
We
I
missed our
don't,
time for that battle. We missed our time for that. I guess
yeah,
the time for that battle, I don't even think when Jay was president of Def Jam, I think that was past time too. I think
yeah.
this battle should have happened in like 97, 98, I guess, around the cannabis time.
But you want to know the crazy thing out of a lot of artists that came after him, you could pick little things from him and saying, "Oh, that was inspired from LL." Even when we look at 50, you know, being from Queens
Oh,
itself, and the set symbol thing and all that stuff, like even 50 will say LL, dog, like the joints for the ladies is LL. Like there's
even
little things.
Tupac, man. I've always said, man, I feel like Tupac was a mixture of LL, Ice Cube, and Chuck D.
Yeah,
All of those things. Like he was the Captain Planet of it, if you will. And
I
since
agree.
Pac, we haven't really gotten anybody who, I guess upped his level, if you will, or updated who he is. I think Kendrick tries to do that, but I think Kendrick catches pieces of what Pac was, and more of on a introspective, conscious level, and not on a how do you want it level. You know what I'm saying? Like Kendrick's not gonna get how do you want it or toss it up or records like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I think
but
Scarface too. Yeah. Pac got some Scarface in him too. Mad Max with the super chat says, all that being said, I got LL third all time. Now over Rakim because I've seen LL adapt past his era in ways that no one else from his era has. You know what, Mad Max? I got to give you credit for that, man. That is a very fair point. It's a
very
legitimate point. Me as a Rakim stan, I even have to admit that. And if I'm being objective here, and that's what I'm here to do, if I'm being objective here, that is one great point to put LL over Rakim. Um, I just think Rakim is so damn nice on the mic, though, man. Like, I mean, I it's difficult. LL has more hits than Rakim too, right? I mean, do you think that? Yeah,
I think just LL for what he did for hip hop overall in many ways have
yeah.
shifted the way that we approach music and marketing and business and from what a mainstream rapper is supposed to be like right now. I mean, when we think about
He's
every
the toughest to rank.
top of the game, you could say they're fruit of LL's tree. You know what I'm saying? Like we have to.
LL's the toughest MC of all time to rank. He is like, it's so many intangibles there, and but I think that the things that go against him are things that it's hard to hold against him, right? Like I feel like even the album thing that I was talking about. Yeah, he doesn't have a Ready to Die. He doesn't have a is dark and hell is hot, because in his era, making albums was a different, it was a different, I don't say different, it was a different formula for making albums, right? You made hit songs, you made B-sides. It wasn't about making albums that flow. I think this new album that he put out, The Force, was really the first time he made an album in that way. Shout out to
Yeah, like
the chat says Too Short has 7 platinum albums. Shout out to Too Short. He's tough to rank too. Jay Short with the super chat. Shout out to Jay Short, West Coast in the building. We're gonna talk some Kendrick. He said, "Here's a food for thought. Isn't Jay's flow dated now too? Can you hear Jay over any of these beats on the Common and Pete Rock or Kendrick albums?"
2 things. God Did was one of the most talked about verses of that year. That's if you want to talk about it.
His flow on God Did was on point though.
I think Jay is at a point where he's in pocket that he could rap however he wants to, where it's just conversational now, and that's the best you get out of Jay is when he's conversational. And then number 2, one thing I would also like to say, I lost my point. What was it? Bring the super chat back up.
He said, "Isn't Jay's flow?" All right, he said, "Here's food for thought. Isn't Jay's flow dated now too? Can you hear Jay rhyming over the beats on Common and Pete Rock's album or Kendrick's album?"
Over Pete Rock. Watch the Throne. They have a joint with
Joy.
Yeah, so we know what that will sound like.
What about the Kendrick stuff though?
What about Kendrick?
Do you think that you could hear Jay rhyming over the beats that are on Kendrick's new
album? Yeah, but I don't think it will translate the same because those are tailored for West Coast artists. I feel like
you think about when Jay rhymed over "Bitch Don't Kill My Vibe." Did he not sound out of place?
I didn't like that. No, I didn't like it. Not that the verse was trash. It was okay, but I don't. That's like I didn't like Jay's remix on Juvenile's High. You know what I'm saying? Both of those go hand in hand with me. I don't really like those joints. Those remixes.
2 things, and not to break up your thought, but with the High thing, I think that was Jay just being out of place, right? He was still Jay at a high level then. But I think with the "Bitch Don't Kill My Vibe," I think that's Jay at a certain age trying to adjust to a generation that he hadn't adjusted to yet. I will give Jay credit. He's done a better job than many, if any, of his contemporaries with adjusting to the times and adjusting his flow and updating his flow. But I think that for me, when I heard him on "Bitch Don't Kill My Vibe" and I heard how Kendrick was sliding on that record, it felt like, oh, yeah, he a little step behind. And that's not a knock at him as an MC. I think that's just being out of practice, right? Like, I was nice once upon a time. If I jump on a record right now, I'm gonna sound crazy. I ain't rapped in forever. You know what I mean?
I think it's a matter of what pocket Jay, like, I think he adapts to like features very well. I mean, because I look at when he did Get Throw, his verse on there, I think he adapted to what they were doing on that record. I think that when he jumps on the Kanye's features on his early albums, I think he has a lot of ways of adapting to records. And then there's some records where I just kind of feel like it just, the pocket for the way Jay rhymes for me is just kind of like not his shit. Cause I didn't like the I Got the Keys joint with Future, the Khaled shit. I didn't like that either. There's just certain pockets I don't like to hear Jay on. Just like there's certain things I don't like to hear certain, like, our favorite artists on. And I just feel like versatility wise though, Jay gets busy if he wants to, but it's just certain avenues, like just spaces I don't like seeing him in. And that "Bitch Don't Kill My Vibe" verse, the Han joint, the joint with Future, those are misses for me that I don't really like.
LL did some things on The Force that I never really heard him do, and I give him a lot of props for that. And Mad Max had a great point. I mean, I would love to see Rakim be able to do something that LL did on The Force. And I don't want to be a hypocrite because I've said the same thing when it comes to Outkast and Tribe. I feel like I give Tribe the nod over Outkast because they were able to do something dope more recent. And they were able to show how they change with the times. I love Outkast to I can't even put it in words. But if we're being honest here, we're looking at groups who are able to span the test of time. It's hard for me to sit here and say I'm going to put a group that operated in a 10-year span and that was it at number one, when we got groups over here that showed how you could do it over 3 different decades and changed up their sound and evolved with the times. I think that's very important when we're measuring greatness. It's a little easier to be great in your time period and in your prime, but how are you operating outside of your prime? Are you even trying to operate outside of your prime? Are you taking chances outside of your prime? And I could say yes for all of those things when it comes to LL.
Yeah, but here's the one thing about groups, though. Groups, how many groups we know that really had longevity?
It's hard, man. I mean, De La Soul's one. A Tribe Called Quest is one. Even though they did break up and come back together, they had big breaks.
Really actively.
The Locks have longevity.
Yeah.
Wu-Tang technically, that's more a brand than coming out with group albums, if you will. But yeah, it's hard.
Yeah, like because even the last greatest group, Migos, like we seen how that story unfolded, and it's just like hip hop groups don't really stand the test of time, man.
Yeah,
We see ones that are collectives, and they may always come back together, like we said, Lots, or at one point in time we thought we was gonna get it out of Dipset again. I don't know, man. Those collectives, like we could see them together and tour together, but actively making music, they don't really stand the test of time.
Well, that's where I struggle when it comes to Cass, right? Because it's 2 guys, and we know that the greatness comes from you guys, and possibly the surrounding crew, because everybody in the dungeon is so musically inclined and so talented. But we got groups out here that'll never be whole again. Like Mobb Deep's never gonna be whole again. UGK's never gonna be whole again, and you guys have the opportunity. You guys are both here, living, alive, breathing. Let's do it, man. You know what I'm saying? Like, I know Bun B wishes he could get the chance to record with Pimp C again. And shout out to 8Ball and MJG, because they never broke up and they continue to be a unit.
Spam in the chat again.
Oh, we got spam in the chat, man. We gotta take care of this, man. The Dream Show. Spam. Hold on, I got him. We gotta report this nigga. Well, how we gonna do it? Misinformation. We're gonna unwanted commercial content and spam. Boom. All right, get him out of here.
Crazy.
All right.
It's getting crazy.
Haters gonna hate, I guess. But yeah, man, you got to give 8Ball and JG credit, because those guys never stop.
Yeah, and, I think 8Ball MJG is just victim of the times. You know what I'm saying? Like the label stuff. I think that Bad Boy stuff just really kind of like killed their I don't know. It just kind of killed like as far as, because I feel like they could have got another run too. You know what I'm saying? We look at this new Tennessee run.
No, and again, I didn't love the adjustment, but at least they tried. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, the stuff on Bad Boy wasn't bad.
Yeah.
The stuff on Bad Boy wasn't bad. I just think that they're just a victim of, because like if I feel like groups like 8Ball MJG, they'll never sound dated, because they always had the Southern stuff, and hip hop has kind of lived in the South this whole time. I just kind of feel it's label situation and just having hit records and just actively still being at it. But 8Ball MJG, I think they were just a victim to the industry, for real. Like I really think they were a victim of the industry, because I'm just looking at those Tennessee artists that's up and coming and what's going on, and being like, I could see them being on pocket with some of the records with them, man. I know they still do shows. They do Funk Fest all the time that come down here to Florida. Like they still tour. The Legends of Hip Hop tour is the last time I seen them. But
you got to give credit to groups that never broke up and continue to keep on their run. Because again, man, rest in peace to Plug too, man. Dave, I hate that, you know what I'm saying? hate that Dave's not here, man. Once De La's whole catalog was able to be streamed, but yeah, those guys never broke up, and they sat there and watched the trials that A Tribe Called Quest went through, and Q-Tip and Fife, and the breakups and the fights. And I mean, I'm sure De La had their fights too, but they were able to keep it within their group and keep it private. Technically, I guess Wu-Tang never broke up either, but
But you know what? The knock on Wu-Tang is we couldn't get them back together after the first album.
oh, all right.
Because even that
Before we go on a tangent, because I would love to speak on that. I don't know if you've seen that Wu-Tang documentary, but RZA is a very special leader, and I've always, at one point, I was even comparing Quavo to RZA, and obviously this is before this whole Migos shit went crazy. But RZA not only is their producer, but he actually was able to bring all of these personalities together. Man. Was able to change these guys' lives, not just musically, but I mean, I could be wrong, correct me if I'm wrong, but he gave these guys religion, you know what I'm saying? Like a way of life. I want to say to some degree, name some of them after, some of these Kung Fu flicks and characters as well, and produced their albums, gave them direction, and went into this deal with Loud where all of them were going to be able to have their own individual deals as solo artists. Now, to your point, it worked for them as individuals and it worked for the overall brand, but for the group itself, once their stardom started to go the way it was going, it was tough to get them back in the studio, but I will give them credit. Still was able to get them in the studio to do Wu-Tang Forever and the W, even with all those, I would imagine, crazy egos. Because by the time they got to Wu-Tang Forever, only Built for Cuban Links was made. You had Old Dirty's solo album was made. Method Man had I'll Be There For You and How High and Bring the Pain. Jizza had made Liquid Swords. Ghost had made Iron Man. Now you bringing these guys back together to do another group album. That's a lot. And it takes a great leader to be able to do that. And I got to give RZA credit for that. That's hard. And I don't think any other leader in hip hop really compares to that.
Just trying to keep ODB together is a task of his own. You know what I'm saying?
The fact that he recorded that album is crazy.
And that's his family, keeping out the streets, think about Ghost, we think about Ray, like I'm saying, that stuff was amazing to keep all those big personalities together, man. But I'm not gonna lie, like when we do look at hip hop groups, it's kind of unfortunate we don't get the longevity with them as far as them actively putting out quality good work.
Why do you think that is, though?
The money.
Yeah.
All about
I think the leadership has a lot to do with it too. When you have somebody like a RZA, it's easier to kind of keep that going. A Q-Tip too, even though I do think Q-Tip's personality started to clash with Fife's personality. And I mean, look, I don't know this. This is just me as a fan watching the documentaries and stuff. It looked like there was some level of resentment there for whatever reason. But that's the mysterious thing about Cass. It doesn't seem like any of that stuff is going on. We're just not getting any music.
Yeah, this is this is about money and egos, man. That's why groups don't last. Like even if we translate from hip hop over to R&B, it's the same thing. It's money and egos. Female or male led groups all succumb to the same thing. It's just the money and egos. And R&B is who wrote the songs or who wanted what management or who wanted to sing lead. Stuff happens.
I'm not trying to be funny. Is there a female R&B group that has never broken up? SWV, I guess.
SWV. Technically, In Vogue never broke up. They,
what do you mean? Yeah, they did.
They dropped some, and they just, they did. It's they did the Destiny Child thing. You know what I'm saying?
They broke. Latoya and Latavia gone. Farrah.
Yeah, I'm saying they did Destiny. And so you're right. They did the Destiny Child thing. They brought you're right. You're right.
I'm trying to think. You know, like the Supreme Switch rosters and stuff. Yeah, SWV. Well,
That's a
Escape never really broke up, huh? Yeah, they break up all the time. What am I talking
right now. Yeah, they're not even touring. Like one of them, yeah,
about?
one of them is not in it. Is not touring with them.
Yeah, and you know what? I do understand where she's coming from. Now, y'all can say whatever y'all want about hang on, what's her name? I'm tripping.
I always forget the sister's name.
Uh it'll come to me in a minute. The one that's on Thug Holiday. Mad back to the super chat says Dot only slid. Hold on. I messed up. My bad. Hold on. Dot only slid because Bitch Don't Kill My Vibe don't have no hard drums. Jay is a Brooklyn nigga. Brooklyn MCs need hard drums and kicks, etc. This era don't have it. I love that excuse for why Jay got killed on Bitch Don't Kill My Vibe. Um, but Latasha Scott, that's what I'm thinking about. Anyway, I understand where Latasha Scott's coming from because she's older than them significantly, and she is the best singer in the group. And she got pushed to the side like she wasn't the best singer throughout most of that group's career. And you know, I don't want to say in her mind, but she's been vocal about the fact that she feels like it's because of her weight. So I could see how, you know, she's like, whatever.
Man, we is I don't know. It's something about groups in hip hop. Groups in it's just black groups in music. Period. We could date this all the way back to before our times. We're talking about 70s soul groups and stuff like that. Like we took to Temptations and like this is one of my favorite movies that's fictional. That gives you a good idea how this stuff goes. Is the Five Heartbeats.
Yeah.
You know, fictional group and everything, but it's based off the music industry at that time and what they were doing, and we see what happened with those type of groups. That is really spot on. If we apply that to hip hop groups or R&B groups, there's usually one or two people, or first it's the music, then one want to be the star, then the other probably has a habit that takes them away from them, and like this all is just a group thing, man. I mean, we've seen it from
Yeah.
R&B to hip hop. It's just unfortunate, man.
I love how New Edition moves as brothers. Now they've obviously had their ups and downs, but you know, even with them separating the group in so many different segments, they were kind of like the Wu-Tang before Wu-Tang, and I mean, they were able to, you know, come back together and still perform as brothers. You don't see that a lot, and even the way Bobby Brown kind of broke out and was such a breakout star, and really was. Shit, he was like what, the second? Yeah, he was second to Ralph before Johnny came. And you know, the fact that even with all of that happened with Bobby, they still bring Bobby in, and they're still always there for Bobby, and with Johnny there as well. And I think that is a great example of how we all wish that groups could work. And I'll give the Locks credit too. There's a lot of separatism when it comes to even us as hip hop fans, how we speak about Jadakiss and Styles and the chemistry that they have. And I could see how Sheik could feel like, you know, the odd man out in many situations, but they never made it like that. It was always about the Locks. We never even got a Jada and Styles album, which I think we really could have gotten, but they move as a unit. And I got to give those groups props for, you know, not letting the ego get to them. And they keeping the group first. And I think that's what's up.
Yeah, and I think now when I think about it, even with all groups, I think when we started thinking about R&B, Jagged Edge might be the only group that haven't broke up.
Huh.
Now when I think about it, because even Drew Hill
Did
broke up.
112 break up?
Yeah, 112 is only touring with two of them now. When I interviewed them, it was just two of them. Yeah,
You know, whenever I see Boys to Men, I only see three. I don't know what happened with Michael.
it's only Slim and Mike with 112. Daron and what's
Serious?
that? Something.
Are you
Yeah.
wait a minute. 112 is only Slim and Mike right now?
Yes. When I interviewed them, it was just those two.
That is.
When you even see them on flyers,
Anybody know why?
dancers, when you see them, they perform. It'll be four on stage, but the other two is dancers. They don't even sing.
At that point, you got to call it something else. At this point, this is Casey and JoJo. This ain't Jodeci no more.
Because even Drew Hill, like they brought in other people, but even the people they brought in, they done been with the group for over a decade now. Tyler and Smoke, and even now, you still see Jazz join them on stage. They'll bring Jazz out because early Drew Hill stuff, I mean, Cisco sang most of the lead, but Jazz was equally as talented. And Woody even sing lead on some songs like, April Showers and whatnot. So, I'm a hip hop. I mean, I'm an R&B guy as well. But
Listen, I will say this, man, and I say this respectfully. I think Beyonce included, I think Cisco's probably the biggest star that was, I don't want to say trapped in a group, but you know what I mean. That was in a group and had to operate in a group. When you look at Cisco and Drew Hill, this dude he was a straight up star, man. Like from the choreography to the singing, like he was doing everything extra. It was very, not calling Cisco Michael Jackson, but it was very Michael-esque in the Jacksons, where it's like, yo, this guy is different.
Cisco had a run into that second album. When that second album got shelved, we kind of just like,
I mean, Cisco was a victim of a super big hit that, a hit.
That album was crazy.
But the song was gimmicky, and he was more than that. And I think that sometimes a big hit like that could put you in a place where you feel like you have to follow it up, and you have to follow up something that's not you. And listen, I'm a big proponent that hit singles sell albums, and that's just the way the music industry works. But I do think it's best for you to have a hit song that reflects who you are as an artist. I think that Wayne having a Millie as a hit was necessary. He needed that in contrast with Lollipop. If Lollipop was the only thing there, I think
big though. A Millie just added on to his list of hits.
No, it did. But I'm just saying, like, you need hits like that. I mean, Wayne would have been okay. He had a foundation anyway, but you need hits like that. You need hits like T.I.'s What You Know. You need stuff that really reflects who you are, as opposed to, whatever you like or something. You know what I mean? That can't be your hit. And I think that Cisco didn't have that hit that matched the thong song. It was Baby Got Back big. You know what I mean?
Facts. The story about that song is funny too, how they got back and got sued for that La
Vida Loca.
Yeah, the Ricky Martin.
That's not cool. I don't like when artists do
man. Like oh man, that sucks.
I don't like that. Jay Short in the super chat says Tony never broke up. Neither did Silk. Very underrated R&B group. Tony never broke up. I guess they just all went and did their own individual things, because
technically Boys and Men didn't. I thought just one just stopped doing stuff with him. I thought he, was something physically wrong with him or something.
Yeah, I thought there was something physically, vocally wrong with Michael. But we could go on the R&B tangent forever, man. Rambe texted me something that I thought maybe we should address in the show. And let me go to it real quick. I don't want to take what Rambe said out of context. He says, so what's the most egregious act of 2024? J. Cole's apology / Port Antonio, or Drake's lawsuit? LOL. I know you're going to say Drake's lawsuit.
Yeah, most definitely. But I got multiple reasons why I say Drake.
I hear that, and that's going to take us into the payola discussion. But I don't know, man. It's something about the J. Cole apology that still doesn't sit right. Like, it just doesn't. I think I'm still going to say the J. Cole apology, because it happened so quickly. And you guys' interview with Ab-Soul kind of gave me a little bit more insight into that too, because not to say too much, but it was kind of like, look, these guys are my brothers. We talking about J. Cole and Kendrick, and it sounds like Ab don't even really know Drake like that. So so I guess I could see the apology coming from that sense, where it's like, look, I'm really close to all parties involved, but I just think it could have been done in a much better. I just don't know why J. Cole jumped out there like that if he was going to do that. At least with the Drake thing, this back and forth of pettiness is just, it's indicative of who they are. It's not really a 180 happening here. So I still think that the J. Cole for me is the answer. And also because of the vibrato that he spoke with, and also because the mixtape he put out there, how he was talking on there, and naming it might delete this later, and actually did delete something later. I'm going with J. Cole here.
So I'm gonna say Drake, but the reason why I'm not gonna say Cole is because I already see now that I think it's starting to become a afterthought to people. I don't think people are holding that against him too much. I mean, he's putting out this podcast. Like I said, I thought it was a good idea. He just announced his 10-year anniversary of Forest Hills Drive. We know people are going to be at Dreamville Fest next year. I don't really think it hurts him as much as us that love the sport thinks of it. I think Cole will be all right. I think because people have short attention spans with hip hop, I think he'll be fine.
Do you think this nostalgic trip that Cole is on currently is a reflection of the apology and the reaction to the apology?
I think based on what the stuff they have, I think this actually been something I was in the making. And it'll be dope if they lead all the way up to that moment. You know what I'm saying? Prior to the album. I think to document that would be cool too. But I think Cole will be fine.
You
Cole
think
just
you said Cole's doing Madison Square Garden, right? They just announced that.
yeah. That's what I'm saying. I think Cole will be all right. I think he'll be fine.
I think he
For
needs to bring Kendrick out.
yeah, for Drake though, the worst thing for him is the buildup of stuff. We have you losing the beef. Your attempt at doing that Heart Part Sit song kind of fell deaf. Where you said you bowed out, then it sounds like you want to reignite it, and then you haven't been taking your L's well. The stuff you're doing on social media, you released the 1,000 gigs or whatever, and that kind of like didn't do the noise that you wanted to do. So all his moves after the beef seems to fall flat. And then I think the thing with these lawsuits or whatever that's coming is the icing on the cake. So I think with all of that, and him being in the center of one of the biggest beefs that people would like to say one of the biggest beefs ever, but this is the biggest thing in hip hop of this year,
Yeah.
and we're seeing at the end of the year what's coming. I think by far Drake wins that by a landfall. It's just too many.
You bring up his 1,000 gigs flop.
Yeah.
It's like it's part of your spiel. Anytime you bring up Drake and where he's at, you bring up the 1,000 gigs thing that didn't do anything.
Yeah, I just think like every lead up, the build up of all the wrong moves until what just was transpiring with these lawsuits, whatever. I think hip hop. I think Cole and we have many people that's been in the game that could say they could understand Cole, and if that was the right thing for him to do. Like if the OGs and people that's currently in here are not really tripping about it, I think Cole will be fine. But
what
OGs
to your
and
point though,
and culture is not responding well with what Drake's doing at all.
right? The percentage of people who can who I guess can level with what Cole did is much higher than the percentage of people who are rocking with what Drake's doing currently. And I don't know if that's just more of a current thing because what Drake did is a lot more current, and Drake's easier to hate than Cole. I mean, I don't know if that's part of it, but that's just the reality. Jay Short with Super Chat says, when I think of J. Cole's apology, I think of what an elder in my family told me. Never trust a person who's friends with everybody. Oh, and Forest Hill Drive is still not a classic. Well, that's the big part of what J. Cole did too. He was so buddy with Drake, and still is, and that's fine. But I think when you do the apology in the way that he did it, and how Drake was left in the line of fire by himself, I mean, there's a wedge there, and I don't know, man. It's no easy way to slide out of something like that without isolating the person that you were rocking with and were on tour with and had a #1 record with. And then I think my biggest part, man, and this goes unsaid, with all the stuff that Drake and ASAP were going through, you went and just did a record with ASAP. It's like, huh?
I
I don't.
always I always feel like with Cole though, it's not like he left Drake hanging. Like Drake put himself in that position. You know
He
what I'm
did.
saying? Like he put himself in that position. Now it's gonna happen regardless. I think that just poked the bear, and you got what you got from that. But I think for Cole, man, I get you. He has a lot of bravado in his raps where he's kind of like, in a sense, tempting somebody to step they head out, and he's ready. But we seen that wasn't the case. But like I said, with this Cole shit, I think people could understand that he didn't want to go to war with his friend because he thought it was gonna go farther than what it need to. I don't think it would have, but like I said, this hip hop shit's so unpredictable. If I would have seen this year and hip hop going the way it did, um, man, I don't know. But it's just
None of
like,
us saw this coming, not to this magnitude. I saw the sneak diss that Drake was doing with Kendrick, but the
I
way that I saw it mapping out was just Drake continuing to sneak diss, and I didn't think Kendrick was going to respond because at the time, Kendrick was kind of slow playing the music that he was putting out, and I didn't think that he was gonna. Again, I say this over and over. I didn't think he was gonna drop 4 songs in 4 days. That just wasn't even. That
and
wasn't on my bingo card.
another thing for me, and maybe this is just my opinion. I would like to know how others feel about it. Do you think that Cole on One Person Shooter was like really dissing?
No.
Was it dissing Kendrick?
No, I think that was more of a competitive, like, we here. This is the I think all right. I think that the competitiveness from a distance standpoint was more of a Kendrick Drake thing. That's why even when this whole thing happened, I was like, that's the battle. Even though people said they wanted the Cole and Kendrick thing, I was like, I don't think that's really a battle. I think that's Cole kind of like being that middle guy, like, yo, we're here. We're in that Biggie, Jay-Z, and Nas moment, guys. And I'm
Mhm.
gonna prove it through my bar work and my albums. These guys was ready to duke it out. I don't think Cole was ready to do that.
So
Obviously.
with knowing that, I don't get the idea if he left Drake hanging.
Yeah.
I still feel like that was just a build up from past little sneak disses and stuff like that. And Kendrick just used that as bait for, he felt like he was keep on being picked at. All right, now I'm coming outside to play. But I just kind of feel like Drake got himself into that. I actually think he's disappointed because Drake wanted the help.
Oh, Drake wanted. I
He
think Drake
wanted
wanted to handle this, and he saw an opportunity where he thought one side was weak. When, like the message you sent me, Drake's side was actually weak at this point, and Kendrick went all in and doubled down and tripled down. LP with the super chat says, since the beef, Drake hadn't dropped one song that has charted past 25, and no one songs in the charts. Kendrick got 7 in the top 10 currently. Biggest L. Well, Funk Flex has something to say about Drake's standpoint. Funk Flex actually agreed with Drake in the payola talk. Let me see if I can find what Flex posted. And I thought that was very interesting. Funk Flex says Drake is 100% right. National play per song. Drake don't pay for play. He made sure you put that out there. Pop slash CHR radio, which is contemporary hit radio for the people who want to know. $350,000. I guess he's saying that's how much it costs to get played on these formats. Urban radio, $250,000. Mix shows, $100,000. Local mix show directors, $40,000. Local DJs, $3,000 to $5,000 per song. DJs on the radio 5 days a week. This is why independent artists don't rise to the top. All you artists know, I ain't never take a dime from you, your manager, or your labels. Bombs have no prices. Thursday, 7 p.m. Hot 97. Let's discuss it. What do you think about what Funk Flex has to say about, I guess, alleging payola running rampant throughout radio, not just hip hop radio, but radio in general?
Yes, to think that just terrible. We back.
All right.
Yo yo.
All right, looks like we're back. We are back. We're back. We're back. Let's see. Let's get Vaughn back on.
Yeah, man, we back. Right coming from man, it's crazy.
I was
OVO.
he was like, no, we're not gonna talk this payola talk. All right, thumbs up in the chat. Let's get everybody back in the room, man. We had a bunch of people in here. So yeah, what were your thoughts on some should I start that part back over?
Yeah, let's
We'll
bring the
start
people.
that part back over. Okay. Let's get what Flex said on the screen again for the people who are just seeing that. Yeah, man, it's a lot going on. We're back. Yes, we are back. We are back. So yeah, Funk Flex has something to say about some of the things that Drake's alleging. He said that Drake's right. Let me find the verbiage here, man. Flex says, here we go. Flex says Drake is 100% right. National play per song. Drake don't pay for play. Pop radio, CHR radio, 350,000. Urban radio, 250,000. Mix shows, 100,000. Local mix show directors, 40,000. Damn, they taxing. Local DJs, 3,000 to 5,000 per song. DJs on radio 5 days a week. This is why independent artists don't rise to the top. All you artists know I ain't never take a dime from you, your manager, or your labels. Bombs have no prices. Thursday, 7 p.m. Hot 97. Let's discuss it. What do you think about what Flex had to say?
If Flex saying he never took a dime from any artist for this shit, that's very noble of him, but I don't believe it. Um, I just don't believe it, bro. Like when if he has integrity as that as a DJ, like shout out to you. But Flex, I don't believe you. You need more people. I don't. The way the industry is set up for payola. I mean, there's even facts from within he's saying that's a big thing for up and coming artists that may have the music is money. You have to pay to get in this thing, man. It's very much pay to play from getting your music to the record pools to being at certain events. I know for up and coming artists, for most of these things, they're kind of getting robbed because you'll have them paying to perform and that stuff doesn't translate to stuff like definitely pay to play. And when you get to a level of Drake or other big name artists, is now the labels, when there's no you think that an artist coming out and their records being spent a bunch of times on radio by iHeart, you don't think the label's paying for that to happen? Like the iHeart stimulus package is what they call it. We have another spammer in the chats, man. What's going
Let me get LP super chat. And then I'm gonna get to this person that wants R. Kelly and Diddy free. LP with the super chat says, me paying for streams doesn't stop you getting play. If I stop paying for streams, it doesn't mean you'll get played more. I'll just get played less. Let me get this free R. Kelly guy out of here. Let's see.
Man, that stuff is crazy.
Yeah, we got haters out there. Listen, I do think that, like you said, the levels jump. And as a person who worked in radio and during a time where I saw bags of money come up those elevators at said radio station, man, even when you talk about concerts that are broadcast on radio and they're saying that, this concert is brought to you by blah, blah, blah records. Or if you're giving out tickets that are sponsored from such and such record label, is that not some sort of payola, right? It's favor for a favor. You get access to this concert, you get access to this and that. I'm gonna need my record played, right? It doesn't even have to be straight up cash to cash, right? This is a relationship,
Yeah.
even though we know it is cash to cash too. But also marketing dollars, right? You have a marketing budget. Every artist that's signed to a major label, they have a marketing budget. Who's to say that said marketing budget doesn't get allocated to said radio conglomerate
Definitely
as
does.
commercials? You know what I'm saying? This is commercial play. Or even when you talk about a person being able to sit down with some of the biggest morning shows that are broadcast on so many networks, so many and syndicated through so many markets. You don't think that their marketing dollars go through that, because that is part of the marketing cost? Who's getting paid here?
Yeah, I
Just
mean, even the exclusives with certain companies,
yeah,
Apple or Spotify or things like that. Even and I'll even say this about Jay when he did the thing with Magna Carta Holy Grail being on Samsung, and that joint was kind of platinum before it actually even dropped, just from it dropping on users' phones. That's all a part of this. This is all a
yeah.
way of how this thing worked, and the people that got it and willing to pay for it, those are the ones that are genuinely the biggest. Generally the biggest. And I just don't understand how one of the biggest artists, people don't think that he benefited from payola. We
One of
seen
the biggest DJs too, and I love Flex. Flex is a legend, but come on, Flex, keep it real, bro. Like, you're one of the biggest DJs in New York, in the prime of New York's dominance, and you're telling me that when you spun Dead Presidents for Jay and those guys, who were independent somewhat at the time, they were on Priority, you're telling me that these guys who were giving money out the wazoo to everyone from Mary J. Blige to not Large Professor, you know who I mean, Ski Beats, and they've talked about getting bags of money from this crew. You're telling me you didn't take one dime from these guys who packaged up this CD with Moet bottles. I think that was the story, right? That's a form of payola too. But you're telling me you didn't take one red cent from these guys. I understand why you have to say that, Flex, but nobody believes that. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah,
nobody believes that. It's not
industry
plausible.
was built off payola. When it went from favor for a favor on getting on covers of these hip hop magazines, or doing interviews or whatever, like all the industry operates on that. Even we have people that's trying to charge for interviews now, because that's like the new way of getting exposure now, is through podcast interviews and stuff. We have artists that are charging for interviews. We have people for up and coming artists that's charging them to perform. Even to work a record outside of your city, that requires money, because you're not going to go to somebody else's territory and bring your stuff and people are is going to be a right to passage. No, you have to kind of like maneuver and have some money in your pocket if you really want to make your way up. Now, I would say for Drake, there was a certain boost for him, but I also think him being partially in that pop mix helped him as well. So I think that pop fame kind of, the payola got him there, but I think some of that pop fame kind of made him go over the top. But there's still things within that when I would say, bro, you're one of, if not the biggest benefit of payola that there is. I
What,
just, I don't know.
And you said something there, right? And I do think that the foundation that Drake has does help when you talk about Canada having his back. And I think that there's a lot of relationships there that people want to preserve by, supporting this artist. But this cannot be denied. When you're talking about launching a new artist, especially in the era that Drake came out in, it takes a lot to launch a new artist. It takes a lot of resources to launch a new. Think about when 50 was coming out with Get Rich or Die Trying, man. They had to onslaught the market, and that takes money, and that's a lot of hands being greased, a lot of palms being greased, if you will. Like, it takes a lot, and that's why when you have those TLC stories and things like that, when artists break with their first album or second album, they're in the hole. And they're in the hole because a lot of people got paid for this artist to become a success. It takes a lot for people to buy into a new artist. It just does.
Yeah,
Like,
man.
you're not gonna come out the gate and everybody's just gonna think you're amazing out the gate. It takes a lot of programming from a radio standpoint, a lot of co-signing to get people sold on a new artist. And that doesn't happen for free, unfortunately. I mean,
Nothing.
I'm trying to think of any new artist that hit the market organically in that way. Like, you have situations like, let's talk about Nas and Illmatic, right?
Mhm.
Illmatic probably is organic as it's gonna get, and I'm sure some people got paid throughout too, but even with that, it didn't do the numbers that people felt like it should have. To do those numbers, it's gonna take resources. It is what it is. Jay Short with the super chat says Funk Flex is mad because the industry money is dried up. And Flex tried to be slick. He may have never taken payola, but has he ever been technically employed by a label and received a salary? Interesting.
Good point. I mean, like I said, man, even to have your record worked as an up and comer, you have to have some money. Like I said, to be placed in these record pools, we have the core DJs, we have big DJ coalitions, and you get on these calls with these DJs, have stuff worked within their record pools that costs money to go be in certain rooms and certain places to even be able to talk this business and work your records and whatever. That's, you got to pay for that. It's just a lot that goes into it. The industry is built on it, and that's why it's kind of funny when we hear rappers say, I got it from the mud, man, I came from nothing. And we start to look back at the history of the relation of who they got with certain people or who they know with opportunities. You kind of be like, I call some bullshit. You came for some money somewhere. Now we have those diamonds in the rough that made it out through those circumstances. But when I look at a lot of these newer artists that got into it, they had the money to get into this game, man, or the relationship.
Somebody who did.
Facts.
Michael Williams with the super chat says, overall, what is a better 3-album run? Reasonable Doubt Volume 1, Volume 2, or the Blueprint 2, the Black Album? That's a good question. Because shit, I guess I'm gonna have to go with the first 3 because of the Blueprint 2. Yeah. Being objective. And I like the Blueprint 2. Jay Short with the super chat says Drake was a light-skinned dude who had ghostwriters, catered to women, and had a co-sign from the hottest rapper Lil Wayne at the time. It didn't take much money to break them in. I will say this. If you're talking about Drake, at that point, the money was in getting him the credibility and the street cred by working with people like Bun B, getting on those records, getting that co-sign from Houston, getting that co-sign from Wayne and people around that. I think those are the things that gave him, I don't want to say the longevity, but gave him room for people to actually feel like it's okay to like this artist. And I think that's where the payola, if you will, came in at, because you had DJs who may not have supported an artist like this now supporting this artist. You know what I mean?
It's funny because we also have to take the Jay Prince thing into play. Because
why did he sign to him, right?
Yeah, why are they so protective of you as an investment?
Exactly.
Like you're literally a walking investment for them. That means they put something into this to make things work for you. Like the Wayne cosign did everything for him, but there's still, like you said, the credibility of Drake, because the Drake we know now is not the Drake that we were introduced to.
Right.
So, like I said, the pop fame went over for him. But like I said, this industry, from every part, from media to music to radio to podcasting now, it's just like all of it is payola at some point, because I could look at, you know, shows or interview based podcasts or shows that has the great content, has the great interviews, but they're not doing the number of what somebody on a machine is. Or I know up and coming artists that are doper than what's being put out right now, but they don't have that label push or that money behind them to get them to that spot. I mean, this works uh in every place of the industry. You know what I'm saying? When we're talking about music and entertainment.
I mean, not to interrupt you, but let's be realistic here, right? You got somebody like Funk Flex, and I'm not saying Funk Flex specifically, but let's just take Funk Flex's spot here, right? You have that prime time spot in New York, and I know what that prime time spot looks like in Atlanta. I've seen the price tags for it and everything.
Mhm.
You have New York City, biggest media market. You're on the number one hip hop station in New York City, and you got that 6 to 10 spot. And we're talking about a time period where radio ruled, radios and clubs, right? And you have that time slot. This person has the ability to play your artist's record and actually break your artist's record and add credibility to it. Number one, by having it on this show, and also exposing it to the largest media market in America. Is that not worth anything? Is that not worth anything? You know what I'm saying? Like somebody is getting paid. Let's look at this like we're looking at TV. I remember, just reading up on Bob Johnson, who started BET. What they used to tell him when he wanted to start BET, and he had the whole idea of having a whole network that would market to, black households, blah, blah, blah. The advertisers would tell him, like, look, if I wanted to market to black households, I'll advertise with the Cosby Show. So let's look at it like that, right? Let's look at television. If you want your product sold to a certain demographic, and how much are you willing to pay NBC to have your commercial run during the Cosby Show? That's exactly what this is, right? Like, how much are you willing to pay said DJ to get your product, your artist, your song out here to the masses? And you're trying to tell us that nobody paid anything for that? That's like telling me that McDonald's paid NBC nothing to get their shit ran during the Cosby Show. Come on, man.
That, and then on top of that, it's like Flex, man. I think a little bit of this is bullshit, because when we're even thinking about how the transitions from artists going from one region to another work, because we're not going to sit here and act like New York radio was like open to other regions of music. So at some point in time, for artists to break up there was some form of payola that was happening. Not only that, we could say that vice versa. People come to other regions and want to break their some stuff. You probably have to break the DJ off something, to get your record played. This is a part of the industry. This is the part of the culture. This is how it has always worked. From old school things where you want your stuff spent or whatever, you want some time on his mic, you slide the DJ, whatever amount of money, and they'll spin your stuff. But if it's ass, they ain't gonna spend it no more. But that got you that one opportunity to present to the world if you was dope or not. Like, this stuff started from the early days into now, where we have an industry and money behind it, the way it's working. To say that nobody benefited from payola is crazy, dog. Like, I don't believe it. There's some DJs that probably did operate in good faith. They play, if they like it and it's dope, they gonna spend it. There's no amount of money you can give them to get them to play your shit. I do think those type of DJs exist. I really do. But for Flex to say he's one of them, I don't believe it, man.
Well, see, I would even update it to, Nas's KD3 album, right? I feel like the song Get Light, Nas being who he is, that song being what it is, Hit Boy being what he is, and New York City being what they are in hip hop music. I have no idea how that song doesn't get rotation on Hot 97 unless you're telling me somebody didn't pay somebody. You know what I'm saying? Like, those are the things that make me feel like, yeah, this is still going on and going on at a high level. You know what Nas means to the culture. You know what Nas means to New York City. you hear this record and you know this song works on radio. Why is this song not getting played again? Because don't play Nas like he's, you know what I'm saying, some underground guy or some up and coming artist. Like, this is somebody who is clearly still relevant, right? And if you don't want to say he's relevant, quote unquote, to your demographic, what Hit Boy is, so you got that going on there. And tell me why he doesn't get played for this record on New York radio.
I
Other than
mean,
the fact that somebody didn't get paid, it just looks fishy. It looks bad.
even with 106 in Park, I think there was even a level of that with certain
Of
videos
course.
#1. Or I even look at it like when we start looking at how now we're thinking about streaming numbers and what Drake is talking about. I think even before it got to that point, I think there was a label push with getting the artists onto the biggest countdown shows to have them on there. There's certain artists that kind of got the red carpet treatment for
Yeah.
their stats in hip hop or whatever. But you're mean to tell me that an independent label and artists like let's think about early Rockefeller, right? How he did with Jay. People wasn't trying to sign Jay and everything. You don't think them having that bread helped them a lot?
Exactly. And they've been very vocal about that. And
Yeah,
honestly, when you think about it, Rockefeller's story is one of the things that kind of broke down the barrier for me to understand how these things really work. I went into radio as a 17, 18-year-old, wide-eyed, thinking that these DJs are out here playing records because they like them. You know what I'm saying?
I
And
found out.
oblivious to the politics. I'm thinking the stuff that I'm hearing on the radio is getting played because it's good. You know what I'm saying? And when you really get an inside look into how these things work, it really kind of turns you against the process, at least people who really love music. And it
Fact.
gets to a point where it's like, man, I don't want to really be a part of this. Now, like you said, there are some DJs that may have that level of integrity, but in my personal opinion, it's hard to think that those DJs actually stick around because it's so rampant and it's just how it works. And that's
I
from a corporate level. I mean, when he's talking about the mix show, what did he say? The mix show directors 40,000. What is that? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's from the top type stuff, and it makes you feel like, well, Flex, why are you talking about this now? And same thing with Drake. You want to talk about this now when this doesn't benefit you anymore. And I agree with Jay Short. It's like the music industry bread and dried up. Now you want to start talking. Like, yeah, the budgets aren't where they used to be, where they could sit here and break Flex or whoever off allegedly 50K, 100K just to break somebody's record. So now I'm telling. You know
yeah,
what I'm saying?
if everybody was doing things for the love, there will be so many opportunities for people. You know what I'm
Because
saying?
my
Like,
thing is, Flex, why ain't you playing the guys that's hot then? If it's like that, you talking about this is why, up and coming artists, can't come up. Well, you break the mold, you Flex. And not just bringing them up there to do a freestyle either. Like, you know, play whoever you think is the dopest right now. And not just, who they say is the dopest. Jay Short with the super chat says, I don't agree with that. Cali loves artists from all regions. That's not only New Yorkers who be on that regional hating. So is there so much they have to be paid to listen to somebody from the West Coast or the South? Well, that's the other thing too, man. When you think about the time period where the South wasn't getting no burn in New York, and then all of a sudden they started getting all kind of burn in New York, you have to think somebody was getting paid. Let's just be
yeah.
honest.
Jay Short got a point there too for West Coast stuff because I was looking at stuff with DJ Head and he was talking about what goes behind making a hit record, and he was talking about how that works and how when you think about West Coast, he's not just thinking about Cali. He said there's Seattle, there's other parts of artists he loves to play and everything. So yeah, I actually agree when he's talking about that. Has there been a new thing of unifying the West and making sure the West kind of supports the West? Yes, but I can say the West Coast has kind of been receptive to each region because they like stuff from the East Coast as well. You know what I'm saying? They like stuff that's down south. I mean, we've seen that, but throughout the history of hip hop, we've seen how the West has been shunned in the music industry. So
But the
there's
West has their own culture too, and they love that and they respect that and they want to keep that going. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like
Yeah.
there's like when we had our bass thing going on in Atlanta, and we got a lot from Miami and Florida,
Mhm.
but it was certain guys that like Kilo Ali and I say Rakim, Raheem the Dream, and DJ Taz, and the Camp, the stuff that belonged to us, and we supported that, and I see a lot of that in the Bay specifically, where they make sure that. I mean, I don't know what kind of payola is going on, if any of that's going on, but anybody who's preserving their sound and saying that West Coast vibe, they're gonna rock with.
Yeah, and I know from firsthand of trying to work stuff in music, with trying to do my own stuff when I was younger, like in college and before college or whatever. There's a big known DJ who's responsible for putting some major artists on, and I remember they were saying that's the guy to go to here in my city, and I remember sending him the track, and I was already getting love from other DJs, but this was the guy. And I'm sending it to him, and he didn't even respond to me telling me it was good or bad or whatever. He just gave me a ridiculous number and said, all I
Yep,
know, he said, whatever K. And I'm like, nigga, I'm a broke college student.
yep,
Well, guess I'm not working with this fool. But I look at that and I'm like, but when we see him on things, it was like, oh, Jacksonville, Duval, I'm doing it for artists, blah, blah, blah. But when you get behind and you send those emails that with those MP3s and that's the response you get, you be like, oh, and like how you said, that can discourage somebody. That make you be like, oh, this is not what I thought it was. I thought y'all was rocking with people based off it being hot. Nah, because how they gonna eat? You know what I'm saying? That's
yep.
how they look at it. How they gonna eat? So, man, this system starts from the lowest levels all the way to the highest, and to think that it doesn't exist, you got to be a fool.
Well, I think there's another thing to it too. Like Flex is one of the few DJs who, is notable in that way. We know who Flex is, but let's think about all of those local DJs who broke guys' records that catapulted them to success. And these DJs are still stuck in their salary job. And these guys go out there and become superstars. There's a level of resentment too. And I do think that, from those gatekeeping DJs and those gatekeepers, they're like, well, shit, if anything, nigga, I'm going to get broken off from you, before you blow up. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm sure that on the flip side of that, there are the guys who got broken by certain DJs, and then they went on to stardom and never came back. And I'm
Yeah,
sure there's a level of that going on too. So I mean, I get
yeah.
it from both sides, but like you said, when you're young and you get hit with that reality check or reality tab, if you will, you're like, damn, I thought niggas was getting played because they was nice.
But you actually right. There's actually you're right when you say that. There is through some time in hip hop that DJ and artist relationship has became severed
Yep.
because of what you speak of. And now those DJs are like, we're coming for everything we deserve now. There are certain DJs that just operate like that. If you got the money, you can get them to play your record. They don't care if it's good or bad. I've heard some terrible shit. And I was like, oh, they must have paid to get those spins. And I've heard some good stuff. But for the most part, yeah, there are some disgruntled DJs. Some of the DJs want to be the stars now. They
Yeah, I
don't
mean, that was the time
perform.
when the DJ knew that they were coming with the artist. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying? Like there was
exactly.
a combo package with the DJ and the artist, and you knew that okay, if I break this guy, I can go on tour or whatever. But now it ain't like that. The artist just gonna leave you. You know what I mean?
Yep. Facts, facts. And so I
Jay
do
Show
think
with the super chat.
that
Oh, go ahead. My bad.
well, you can rock out.
Yeah, Jay Show with the super chat says the Bay was different, Mike. If you did not, I'm sorry, if you did not play local artists out here on the radio, especially in certain time slots, people would come see you about that. You had to show some love to the Bay. And you know what? And I think every market should be like that. I think New York lost its way when it came to that, man. And I think even the New York fans out there who are watching our show have to believe that New York radio somehow got corrupted to the point where the local guy in New York was no longer getting the big platform that they once got in the 90s era of hip hop. And you have to think money has something to do with that.
I mean, the money is the reason why I feel like we get a lot of trash too.
It
You know,
is.
that's why a lot of trash is breaking. That's why a lot of artists that in any other era, or even if we just date back to like early 2000 era, 2010s, with these same artists that is of this quality still exist in that era. No, there's a lot of stuff where the talent is. It's not about the talent. The
I mean,
talent
I
is
saw it firsthand. I
the
saw it firsthand here in
talent.
Atlanta.
talent is like not even half of what matters anymore.
I'm gonna say this, man.
Like,
From what I saw in Atlanta radio in the time that I was there, I truly believe that if Outkast would have came out in the early 2000s in the same way that they came out in 94, I don't know if they would have broke here. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. You know what I'm saying? I think that strip club culture is one thing. There was a lot of money that came with that. You know, and whoever had the most money would win. You know, you were going to win the DJs over, you were going to win the strippers over, you were going to win the clubs over, you were going to win the club DJs over. And based on Outkast's original approach, I don't know if that would have worked in that time in Atlanta. I don't know, you know, and it's disheartening, you know, to hear it in that way. But yeah, it is what it is, man. Like payola was all over the place. It's not just payola with the and see that's the other added factor too, Sean. It's like you're telling me the radio DJs are gonna sit there and let the club DJs eat like that and not get nothing? Come on, man.
yeah.
Let's be honest here. If a radio DJ is out here getting his radio salary and he sees that this artist is out here spending, as Flex would say, $5K to a club DJ or whatever, you're telling me the guy in the main slot doesn't have a price tag either? Come on now.
Yeah, and it brings me these two questions. My first question is radio important still? Do you feel radio is still important?
I personally don't. I've talked to artists that say it is. And basically, when you think about how streaming works and how bandwidths work with streaming, I guess it is. I mean, if labels are still willing to pour money into radio like that, it must be important to some degree.
So
But
for
I
me,
don't think it's influential anymore. I'll say that. Regardless of whatever it's important for, I don't think that it breaks artists anymore. And I don't think that it is important in an influential manner.
so I'm going to answer that question myself. I think radio is important for the casual listener.
Yeah.
And the reason why I say that is because the internet kind of already dictates what's hot, right? And I feel if you're already like a core listener, you're going to listen regardless. I feel like it's for the casual listeners that's ready to turn their car on a road trip or going to work in the morning and coming home after work. And those are the people that are listening to radio, and a little bit of older folks that listen up for, or even my age and above that may listen for the radio morning shows or whatever. But for the most part, I think radio is for the casual listener. I think the internet kind of determines the core of what's hot and what's not right now. I think because now it brings me to my next question. How important is the DJ? Because now we're starting to see a shift of where I'm 50-50 on the DJ. I think a DJ or big known DJs in certain places are big for up and coming artists if they still are operating off integrity of just wanting to play what they think is hot and they break somebody. So I do think DJs still have the power to break to break artists, but I think with streaming and people being able to virtually create their own playlist and social media and influencers kind of, these rappers are not coming to sit with the biggest DJ or the radio station to have interviews about their music. They're going to the podcasters and the streamers, the Kai Cenat, or, they're going to these podcasts and stuff. Like when we're even looking at the OGs like LL, when he was doing his album run, he's sitting with everybody from radio, but the podcasters was where it was at, so
I agree with what you're saying.
Yeah, I'm thinking about like the importance of the DJ and the importance of radio. I think radio is late. Like, and the reason why I say radio is late is because they operate like Monday through Friday in the news cycle now.
Yeah, they can't keep up.
All that. So if something happens on Friday night or over the weekend or whatever, and like say for the holiday, the things that we were talking about on our show last week is stuff that the Breakfast Club is just talking about today. And that's a pre-recorded show or pre-taped show. So it's like The podcasts are quick. We can, if something comes out, we can hop on here on the internet and just give a reaction. Those radio shows don't operate like that. And being that there are a radio show, I've never seen a radio show like the Breakfast Clubs that is not as censored. But for the most part, radio is very still censored. Like
Yeah.
still, the Breakfast Club gets their push on whatever because they had their finger on the pulse with the culture for so long that they kind of could push the limits more than other stations. But for the most part, radio is still like, you can't say certain things on radio, and podcasts kind of have their finger on the pulse right now when it comes to like being quick on the news, the internet. When Twitter dropped, we were literally getting our news from Twitter, man. That direct consumer feedback or whatever. You could throw out a song on the radio and go to Twitter, and Twitter could tell you what they think of it before you decide if you want to keep on and whatnot.
I will say this though. As far as your DJ point, I do think that there's always going to be a place for live entertainment, right? I think that you can't replace when people going outside in those moments when people are gathered together. For the people who go outside and they have a DJ or wherever they're going, there's a DJ, there's other people, there's moments. That DJ does have power and has the ability to either break something, whether that's nostalgic or whether mixing something that people never heard mixed before and kind of create that mood. That's always going to be there. Just like concerts are always going to be there. You can't really duplicate those moments in gatherings, in group settings. Now, as far as the radio play, I do think that there's an intriguing thing when it comes to like, let's look at a group like Griselda or a collective like Griselda. They've been successful on every internet level, like you were saying, but for whatever reason, they still want that level of radio acceptance and radio play. So, I mean, I guess that would be a question for them. Why does that matter still if radio doesn't really matter? You know what I mean? And so, I don't know. I guess it depends on what you want, and maybe it's more of a bucket list or a checkoff list for them, other than something that is really, really needed. But yeah, I mean, from a distance, you would say like, yo, from an internet level and from a core level and just galvanizing the fan base, they've done all of those things and they still want the radio play. You would think a group or a collective like them would be like, man, fuck the radio. You know what I'm saying? But they still want it. You know?
Radio's for that crossover appeal, for that, the bigger grand scheme of things where you want to get on those bigger shows and bigger, things that take you to the next level of music. But for the most part, the internet runs hip hop. The influencers, the streamers, the podcasts, that's what's running hip hop right now. I don't think, even some DJs may be mad when I say this, but if you guys have the influence like you guys say you are, and you guys are still important, why don't some of you guys use that same importance to break artists from your city or from your region? If all of you dope DJs in certain areas or whatever, if you guys are so important as you say you are, break at least two artists from your thing and see how that works. When is the last time has a person like Flex or anybody like, when have they broke artists? You know what I'm saying? Right. I see what DJ Head is doing with the West Coast and what he's doing for those young up and comers in the West. Like, DJ Head is one of those DJs who I've seen do that. But these big known DJs and stuff like that. Look, we have DJ Drama, and I have some stories I know about DJ Drama as well. But DJ Drama, the person you broke was what's his name?
Harlow. Either one of those. It was like,
but out of you mean to tell me from all these circles you're in, Harlow was the guy for you, right? Come on, man. Yeah. You guys have the power. If you guys are as important as you say you are, you guys have the power to break these artists, and you guys complain about where music is, and you guys have the power to put these artists on, and you guys don't do it.
Yeah, and I'm sure that they have a bunch of artists that they know are dope, and a bunch of artists that have come to them or, related to people that they rock with, that they've heard dope stuff from. Why aren't you playing these records? Like, can you not play them? You know what I'm saying? Like, is there somebody in upper management telling you what you can play and can't play? And why is that? Who's paying them? Jay Short with the super chat says, Flex was a tool for the industry. he held people back so that he could get a personal bag. Maybe now the Tom Joyner has retired, he could take over the cruise. They'll need a DJ between tour spots.
That's foul.
All right. Well, all right. Before we get out of here, man, there was a meme that we came across. I know we probably got some other stuff that we had to get to, and maybe we can't. You know what? No. This is what I want to get to
Yeah, let's
because
get to it.
I've been talking to Ron offline, right? And I listened to all three of these Dr. Dre and Snoop songs, all these songs that are going to be on Missionary, and they're releasing them week to week. First, they put out Gorgeous, then they put out what's the
Out of the Blue.
Out of the Blue. Then they put out Another Part of Me featuring Sting. I listened to each of these songs 3 times each. I like all 3 of these songs, and I'm not gassing or whatever. And if I put it in order, I think I like Gorgeous the most, then I like Another Part of Me, and then I like Out of the Blue third. But I think all 3 of them are dope to the point where I feel like if this album continues on this rate, and we're going to hear this album, next Friday? I think this is going to be album of the year based on what I'm hearing right now.
I think the joint with Sting wasn't bad, but I've heard Sting do some collabs with some artists that's been amazing. When I heard Gorgeous, I'm like, okay. When I heard Out of the Blue, I'm like, all right, they're still showing they could rap. All right. But when I heard the Sting, it threw a wrench in how I foresee this album going now. I'm more interested in what this album flow is going to look like because I want to see where does that song fit into this. You know, I think one of the people that does well with throwing those type of records on albums has been Jay. You know, Kingdom Come, he had Beach Chair. You know, when I think Blueprint 3, he had Forever Young. But when I hear Snoop having one of these records, it makes me want to hear what the rest of this album sounds like, because that's why I say it's hard when you're marketing this as a sequel to Doggy Style, you know. And like I said, I told people to take that with a grain of salt, because for you to saying this is Missionary, I feel like this is where they're at with music at their age. This is what they're able to do. I don't think it's like a direct Doggy Style sequel in the sense of you guys gonna get there's what we came off that. No, they're not reduplicating those efforts. But it does make me wonder what is the flow and the real direction of this album. I'm not too crazy for the Sting record. I don't think it's bad, but I don't know how that hits with the rest of the music. It makes me think that this album is gonna be like they're aiming for mainstream success.
Oh yeah, of course.
And I don't know, especially when I come off hearing the Dog Pound album sounding so Dog Pound. Like when I'm hearing that, it makes me wonder what are they gonna do with this. And one thing I can say about all 3 records though is those are very polished mix and master records. The sound, like I said, I cannot take that away from Dre. The sound sounds great, but I'm not too crazy for that 3rd single they put out.
Michael Williams with the super chat says, rank these from best to worst: 444, Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers, and the Death of Slim Shady. Well, I think you put it in order.
Yeah,
I think you put it in order. I'm not a huge fan of. You know what? I'm gonna be honest.
Yeah,
y'all gotta kill me for this. I got Mr. Morale ahead of 444. I'm gonna go Mr. Morale 444, and the bigs. I'm sorry, Mr. Morale 444, and then the Death of Slim Shady.
I'm gonna be honest. I have to say 444, Death of Slim Shady, and then
oh, you got Mr. Morale last?
Yeah, man. Being honest with you, I'm just thinking about just being rap albums. When I listen to Mr. Morale, I'm telling you, I don't think what he was intended on doing with that album translated to the culture as much. I think it was
it didn't connect, but the writing was brilliant, and I will give him credit for writing.
I was just talking about this album today. My dog finally went and listened to the whole album, and we were talking about it. And I'm just like, I feel like it was like it's beyond hip hop. That was really like therapy. I feel like when we want to sit down and listen to music, I don't think that's what people are going to on that album. Do I think it's importance for it? Yes, but I don't think Mr. Morale just translated well to the hip hop fans the way it was intended to. I think it's still too mature for hip hop and where we are.
I think that Mr. Morale is forgettable. I do. And even when we talk about, his most current effort, you know, I think that the stuff on Mr. Morale is kind of an afterthought now. Mad Max of the Super Chat says, I don't know why y'all let Short say New York be regionally hated. When Ferg got dot on camera saying that he was bigger in NY than in Cali. Cole blew up in NY more than North Carolina. Fact is, New York always show love. Just don't hype anything. I think that's a generational thing for sure. Mad Max of the Super Chat says, we love Luda more than ATL does. Now that might be true. We rock with Jeezy heavy, T.I., Future, etc. This myth that my region hates is cap. Most hip hop podcast audience are from any region, be New Yorkers, including A2HH. Yeah, we got a lot of New York in here. I will say that. Jay Short with the Super Chat says, Mad Mac knows that Cam and AZ can come out to Cali and do a show. E40, Dog Pound, or DJ Quick can't go to New York and do a show because they're still mad about this record from 30 years ago.
Even when we hear Nori address like stuff about New York and how they were defending, like there was gatekeeping going around in New York. If that was the case, then these are not just myths that's pulled out of nowhere. You know what I'm saying? Like New York wasn't embracing everybody until they kind of had to. You know what I'm saying? Like let's keep it a buck. There are certain artists that did reach out early and work with down south artists, but for the most part, that wasn't like a trend that was just going on.
50 changed everything. 50 being the hottest out of New York and selling what he sold by being so national, if you will, and taking on like I don't want to say a West Coast Sonic because obviously he had Dr. Dre and Interscope as the backdrop. But then from a flow standpoint, it was very Southern with the slang and the drawl and the way he was putting together hooks. But he was from New York. And I feel like he was kind of the first to really blur the lines, but still be very New York with it. And then you had Dipset doing what they were doing. But like I always say, man, when I saw ASAP Mob come through and ASAP Rocky come through, I was like, oh, you got young New Yorkers who are not influenced by New York outright. This is Southern influence. And it was incredible to see because coming up in a time when New York was New York, it was like nothing outside was going to penetrate that. You had certain guys like Busta and Method Man and DMX too that had an appeal that was national, but they were still very New York, which is incredible when you think about it.
Young New York, at least from what I see on the outside, when I look at young New York, they adopted, drill. Drill wasn't New York. Although I feel like drill was a direct result from 50.
I agree, man.
50 thing, putting that in records the way he did. I think drill adapted some of that from there, but I think drill didn't originate in New York. That you're not about to sit here and make it seem like that happened. We know that came from Chicago. But even when I see like I said, New York has to get back to its identity. I'm not going to put too much more on New York, but that's where it's at right now. We can't just sit here and act like, New York embraced everything. They embraced it when they had no choice but to. Like I said, we had certain artists that didn't mind working with Southern artists, but for the most fact, if that was the case, then Outkast wouldn't have to say what they say on that stage at the Source Awards. This didn't come out of
the chat. He says, it is a myth that Biggie copied the Doggy Style on his debut. Y'all let the bravado trick you. I don't know if it's a myth that Dr. Dre's formula is very influential to Diddy's approach on Ready to Die. I don't think that's a myth. I think that the Chronic, when you listen to the Chronic and how it comes together, Diddy's even said this himself, that the Chronic and the way they were able to talk about the West Coast, he wanted to paint that backdrop for Biggie on Ready to Die. I mean, that's documented. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, the Chronic is important.
Yeah,
With
like,
that being
even,
said, go ahead,
even
bro.
even when you listen to NWA or how they, did they stuff with their interludes and stuff like that, it was kind of like a structure that Dre stuck by when he
Yeah.
made albums. There was an entertainment portion of it, but yeah, it's like I don't think that was bit from that side at all. I
I mean,
think
look, and the West Coast is way more influential to the East Coast than a lot of people want to give them credit for it. And obviously, New York is influential to everybody. So, we're not going to sit there and, minimize New York on that level. But I think for a current generation, the South has been as influential to everyone as New York was for everyone in the 80s and 90s. I
facts.
mean, when you look at 3-6's influence on everybody, it's amazing, man. Like, these guys made these records in 94 and 95 that people are using 30 years later, and they sound up to date. It's not like 3-6 shit sounds old. Like, they're not even having to revamp them too much either. Like, it just sounds like today.
Yeah, I mean, probably one of the most sampled hip hop acts right now ever.
3-6 has become, to me, they're the Parliament Funkadelic of hip hop. Because when Dre was using the Parliament Funkadelic stuff and Q in the West Coast, it was like, it sounded so current, but these records were like 20 years old. And I think that's what 3-6 is living in right now, where it's like the stuff that these guys made like 20, 30 years ago sounds current now when the younger guys are using it. And it sounds natural for the younger guys. Jay Short with the super chat says Eric Sermon is still on Drink Champs capping. Mad about MC Hammer at Oaktown 357 running him out of Oakland 30 years ago. Some New York fans must heal and move on. Mad Max says, Mike, I'm saying if Biggie copied Dre, it's a myth that that we ain't rocking with other regions. Oh, okay, I got you. He said,
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
I can say about New York hip hop is that was a standard of where all music want to get to. That was a standard. Like, I think people from the West, people from down South, all of us could say that the influence of you wanting to be a rapper and wanting to be one of the hottest, the standard was what was New York, because these
New
artists
York fun.
listening to LL, Rakim, KRS-One and stuff like that, that still had influence everywhere. New York was the standard of hip hop. But throughout that time of the evolution, I feel like, and this is just me speaking from what I'm seeing put out, I feel like New York has lost its identity and everybody else's identity has shined more. And because New York lost its identity and it hasn't came back around to New York, I feel like the balance is broken. And I feel like there's the
Is it
West.
fair to say that New York hasn't updated its formula?
And that's all I'm saying. I don't and I don't know how anybody could disagree with that. Like, when I think about when your last biggest act from New York is Ice Spice, that says something. Out of all the dopest spitters you can find from around y'all blocks and could wrap circles around niggas, like, sorry, Ice Spice was the one that did it for y'all. That was who was repping and why for y'all. I can't tell you what was the last biggest New York act.
I just think that there was a misstep with New York City um, not rallying around. And I'm not saying that the artist didn't do it, but the market didn't rally around what those guys in Buffalo were doing with Griselda. I think that would have helped everybody. I think if New York City as the institution, and I know the people and the fans and the artists, they rallied around Griselda, but if New York radio would have actually rallied around West Side Gun, Benny the Butcher, Conway the Machine, and the rest of that camp, I think that could have did great for New York as a market. But for whatever reason, if you're not a part of Brooklyn, Queens, Manhattan, or the Bronx, you get, you don't get looked at like that. I mean, we saw how the fans gravitated to Wu-Tang, the nation gravitated to Wu-Tang, But shit, New York radio shitted on Wu-Tang. And I have to believe that's because they were from Staten Island. Same thing with the Source magazine. Them not rating Wu-Tang forever. Like, I have to believe that's because they're not from, the main boroughs. Jay Short with the Super Chat says, by the way, I love New York rap. And most of my favorite artists are East Coast rappers. I just hate New York rap fans. In the New York rap industry, the gatekeeping and hate that gate kept, and hate it on the West Coast and the South. That's factual. Go ahead.
And the thing I'm just gonna say on this is like I miss to when you could listen to an artist and tell where they're from. I miss that when I go on a trip to another state or another city, I'm hearing what's popping on their side and the new artists that's coming from there. And now you really can't tell who is who unless people make a conscious effort to say where they're from. If you were to put minus, Kendrick going back to some of the West Coast roots, if you were to put Kendrick, Cole, Drake, Tyler the Creator, and whoever is on the level of doing stuff all in one room, can you tell where all of them are from?
Yeah, I mean that's the effect of the internet.
It sounds, but you can't tell where any of them are from.
I remember I was watching this. I think it was a Noisy documentary, and they were talking about I Love McConan, and the funniest thing somebody said on there was like, "That nigga ain't from Atlanta; he from the internet," and that's what it is. Like, nobody's from anywhere anymore. They're from the internet.
I miss individuality in hip hop, man. Just having your own sound, your own style, your own, sounding like where you from and stuff like that. Like, I feel like everybody is doing the best impression of what's hot, and until it runs out. Like, I'm not gonna lie, I love drill and what Chicago did with it, because Chicago's not the originators as far as the sound, but they are the ones that godfathered it into hip hop as far as we know of today. When people talk about drill, they credit Chief Keef, they credit all that early drill stuff to Chicago. So we can't act like that didn't exist. But it's just like that was the last time where we, besides the South, that was the last real time we could identify a sound with a region. That Chicago, that drill in Chicago. West Coast is always gonna have the West Coast sound. That's never gonna change. But the newest style of a newer wave of stuff, drill was that last one. I don't know what the next. What is the next one?
Well, it's on producers to change the sound, right? Like I remember, even if you transition hip hop from the 80s to the 90s, the late 90s to the 2000s, it's always that one producer or collective producers that come in and actually change things. I mean, even if you look at the blueprint for Jay-Z in 01, after Kanye and Just Blaze and Bink came through with those soul samples, not saying they started it, I know that was way before them, but in that era when the radio was dominated by Swiss beat sounds and Neptune sounds and stuff like that, you had these guys doing these things with soul samples on mainstream records. Then, people start piggybacking off of that and it kept going. But again, it starts with the producers. Now, before we get out of here, there was a meme that came across where it was like if you're on a 6-hour ride, they had a list of artists and you could only pick one artist to listen to. Do we have that on the screen? Let me see. Let me pull it up here. It says you got a 6-hour car ride and you can only listen to 3 artists the entire way. And they got Jay-Z here, they got Nas here, they got Lil Wayne here, they have Eminem here. They have Kendrick Lamar here, Biggie, Drake, and Tupac. What 3 artists are you picking?
I could, like, when we were talking about this earlier, I said it'll be a toss-up. Because I could say Jay and Pac, or I could say Jay and Lil Wayne. Because I could listen to Wayne dating all the way back to Hot Boys or whatever, all the way up to probably not the last Carter album, but the Carter album before that. I think Wayne, he has a good enough category from mixtapes to albums, whatever. I'll be entertained that whole way.
A lot of collaborations too.
It's so many Wayne records. Like some of my best favorite Wayne records are not even from any of his albums. There's mixtape joints. There's joints he did with Dipset that I like. Like Wayne just has so many things I could dig for as far as music that can keep me entertained for a whole car ride with just him alone. Pac, I'm not gonna lie, I can go back and listen to some early Pac records, but I usually stay around Machiavelli and All Eyes on Me. Although I think against with Me Against the World, I think that was I think I like that project too. I think that project is slept on. But yeah, I just from All Eyes on Me and Machiavelli, those are ones that I still frequent personally right now. But yeah, I would say it's a toss up between Jay and Wayne or Jay and Pac. I think they all have the category. I mean, the catalogs for me to bear with and can ride with for that amount of time.
I think the Kendrick's catalog for album to album is excellent when it comes to album making. I think that Kendrick, he really excels in the album making process, even though I do think that his last two albums would probably be his bottom two for me. But I think where he doesn't excel at is, I think that the big, and they're going to kill me for this, but the big records, you know what I mean? Like the big notable songs. The first person that actually stands out to me on here, and I know he might not have the best or most lengthy catalog, but Biggie stands out for me, man, because Biggie has damn near a flawless catalog. And honestly, it's granted, it's smaller. It's a very small catalog, but there's very few mistakes in Biggie's catalog, including his features. Huh?
For a 6-hour ride?
Well, we got three people that we're listening to. So, I mean, he don't have 6 hours worth of material, I don't think, right? He got all eyes on me. He got Life After Death, which is probably a good hour and a half, maybe. He got Ready to Die. I think Biggie, give or take, man, he might have like 3 hours worth of material, and that's crazy to say. But even when you think about his features, like the Dolly Baby, Can't Stop the Rain with Shaq or whatever, you got Total Can't You See remix, even with that, and you got the Mary stuff. You got I was gonna say the what, but that's his record with Method Man. I mean, he didn't really make any bad songs. So I'm gonna go with Biggie, and he gives you range. He gives you that R&B feel. He gives you the street shit. Biggie has a lot of versatility. Then I don't know, man. I might go Jay after that. Jay just has such a lengthy catalog. I think Jay's strength is in his B-sides. To be honest, with the exception of Eminem here, because he shouldn't even be on here. Kanye should be on here.
It should definitely be on here.
I think that Jay-Z's singles might be the weaker part of his game, if you will.
Whose singles?
Jay-Z's singles.
Oh, okay.
I think Jay-Z's strength is in his B-sides. His strongest records are the records that didn't get radio play like that. His records that did get radio play, like Big Pimpin' and Give It To Me, and those aren't really my favorite Jay records. Now, I will say this.
I agree
a record I go back to a lot that was one of his singles is Jigga What, Jigga Who. That shit's crazy.
Yeah,
that's a record that, actually aged very well for Jay-Z's singles. But if I'm picking Jay here, it's going to be more so for the B-sides. It's going to be more so for the Heart of the Cities, The Streets Is Watching, the Million and Ones, the Evils, The Dead Presidents, which I know is a single, but whatever. Can I Live? I heard Can I Live like on a TV show the other day. It's crazy. And then Nas, Pac, Nas. So I got to be in a certain mode to listen to Pac, man. So I might go with Nas here. And
got so many different vibes to his time, though, man. It's just like from like if we just take these 3 albums, if we just take um Me Against the World, All Eyes on Me, and Machiavelli, all 3 of those albums got joints you could fuck with.
Jay Short Super Chat says Cube needs to be up on this screen. He has classic albums and not just hit songs, but iconic songs to go up with just about anybody in the picture. I agree, man. And Cube's recent album to me is dope. I like it. He's spitting on there. Yeah, Cube is unsung. I was gonna go through my top 10 today, man. I think that's just gonna have to be reserved for next show because we'll end up going a whole nother album. But spoiler alert, Cube is in my top 10.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, man. For me, like I said, it'll have to be Jay, Wayne, and Pac. Like I said, those 3. However you want to swap them out, I think it'll do it for me. But like I said, Wayne could do it alone, just for me, just because he, so many early joints from him, mixtape joints, features, albums. Like it's so many joints that I can get from Wayne all in one. The catalog is just monstrous.
Let me be perfectly clear, though. I think Tupac would beat any of these guys in a versus. If we're going 20 songs deep, I think Tupac would beat everybody.
Oh, Tupac has nuclear bombs of records. Like, we can be honest.
I think you got songs like Ambitions as a Rider, you got Dear Mama, you got, records like No More Pain, you got Pain from the damn Above the Rim soundtrack, you got Shed Tears, you got Brenda's Got a Baby. Like the range.
Yeah.
The range that he has is just too much. And then you can count stuff like California Love, which I'm not a huge fan of, but you can't deny that record. Like
Get Around, that's a fun record, like even that can be on a, I'm with you, Mike.
I put this catalog up against anybody. Yeah. And that's saying a lot, man, because he's been gone for almost 30 years now, and no one's been able to match his catalog.
Yeah, like Pac, that man, he has some joints, bro. Like even like some of his B-sides on All Eyes on Me was that's hard.
Actually, those are some of the strongest moments. I mean, No More Pain is technically a B-side on All Eyes on Me. We're not even counting like America's Most Wanted or I Ain't Mad at You and stuff like that. Like Only God Could Judge Me. Like
Still can't see me? The joint with George Clinton on that joint?
Oh my God. Yeah, I didn't know people like Can't See Me like that. I love that record, man. Even though it's Dr. Dre kind of doing a retread of Knee Deep with the, What's My Name from Snoop Dogg, but still, it's hard. It's hard.
I got my mind made up. Yeah, man, come on.
Mind Made Up is crazy. You could go Every Other City We Go.
Rolling.
It's all about
LA.
Live and Die in LA,
yeah, man.
We didn't even say How Do You Want It, or did you say that?
I didn't even say How Do You Want
It. Temptations.
Yeah.
Yeah, this man's catalog is insane, man. Like, but really, any of these guys on the screen, like when you play Dear Mama, like what are you gonna match up against that record?
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard.
But like I said, we could swap him out and put Kanye on there. We could I think Ross deserves to be on this list too. I think Ross has some bodies of work. I think Ross has some bodies of work. He has some albums.
I will say this though, and I'll say this respectfully. I don't know if it's, the Meek Mill album that he did, Ross hadn't really given us a body of work to speak about in a long time.
Yeah, his last 2 albums were duds. Like whatever the one was before the joint with Meek, I didn't like that one either. And the joint with Meek was bad.
Miami too?
Yeah, I don't know, man. But
that Mastermind, Ross is giving us something to talk about.
Give us, man, because Mastermind is still one of my favorite Ross albums. You know what I'm saying? Mastermind, God Forgives and I Don't, Teflon Don, Triller.
God Forgives is the one I like. That's the one.
I'm telling you, like Ross got some joints, man.
Jesus Pieces, 10 Jesus Pieces. Woo!
Man,
I'm
Ross.
listening to that tonight. It's just crazy.
And I see. There's a certain Ross. There's the mafia Ross in my eyes, and then there's a trap Ross. Trap Ross is like hood billionaire. Like he gives you those trap
Yeah.
albums with that every runners. But then there's that like kind of mafia style Ross that God forgives I don't, that mastermind. Like Ross has two sides to his type of albums approaches, if anybody never noticed.
I like
Um
Hood Billionaire, man. I think Hood Billionaire kind of got overlooked because it came so close to Mastermind. That Elvis Presley Boulevard with Project Pat was hard.
Teflon Don is dope.
Yeah, it is. Teflon Don got Maybach music, right?
Well, a lot of the albums got Maybach music joints,
Well, I'm
but
talking about the first one.
the first one's on Triller.
Triller. I'm thinking
That
about
was-
Triller. What was the single on Teflon Don? Was that BMF?
I don't. I did three was
I gotta
three
look at it.
on Teflon Don. I gotta go back now because I think the joint with Jay and Dr. Dre was on Teflon Don. I think I gotta go back and
All right,
look at it.
before we go. Yeah. No. That was Was that God Forgive? No, it wasn't God Forgives. His catalog is deep. Before we go, what is your favorite Maybach music?
Ooh, I gotta go back.
Off top, man, my favorite is the first one, but maybe that's just nostalgic. Jay killed that shit. Now we were talking about Jay in his retirement and his verses while he was retired.
The
That one
first
got me
one on it,
excited
right?
to hear it again. Huh?
The first one had Wayne on it too, right?
Nah, that was just him and
What
Jay.
got tats?
Yeah,
That was
it's
had
like
Wayne.
the girl is mine, life's a bitch, so
I
the
like
whole world is mine.
I like the first one, but I also like the one that had Erykah Badu on it.
That was dope. That was
Yeah,
dope.
the one Erykah Badu was dope too.
Come on, Ross, man. We need another album, man.
Yeah,
We need another Ross album.
yeah. Ross have some albums, man. Like, yeah.
All right, man. Hit like and subscribe, man. We appreciate y'all kicking it with us. I think next week, man, we need to really start talking about best albums of the year and really do that breakdown because it's that time. I guess we'll be, I won't say counting down to Missionary from Snoop, but I'm sure by Friday we're gonna hear a new record. I think people are being too hard on the record so far, but we'll see. Maybe I'm caping for the record because I'm a fan. I don't know, but I think we'll be able to get a full picture when the whole thing drops. But I'm cool with what I'm hearing.
Yeah. We could do that, and there's some moments in hip hop we could talk about too this year. You know.
Yeah, I think
this,
we can talk. We need to start giving out awards too, or at least thinking about it.
Yeah, man. Yeah, there's some stuff we could talk about from based off this year. You know, I know it was totally taken over by the Kendrick and Drake stuff, but there's some things in hip hop that we discussed throughout the year that
there's more things to happen
that could be recapped. Yeah.
All right, man. Great kicking it with you again, and great kicking it with y'all. Hit like and subscribe, and yeah, be on the lookout for some more interviews that are on the way. And yeah, man, we're gonna holler at y'all next week, if not before. So, all right, yep.